funny guy. Funny guy. Well, the mayor's not here, so somebody has to pick up the banner and Chad's doing a bang up job. I know. But it was kind of dad jokish. All right, this is the committee of the whole. We'll go to Denise to kind of guide the discussion at this point. Pick us up from where we are, where we've been,
Well, I guess Brian's up too.
where we've started.
Okay. So next slide.
Do we have slides? I'm probably sitting in the wrong chair to see slides.
Oh, you guys can't see them.
Hang on.
Ooh, I got a good view of them.
Pamela.
There's finally an advantage to being online. It's a hard
There
way
we
to
go. I
attend a
can't
meeting I
see
found
that.
out 2 weeks
Oh,
ago.
I hate it. I really miss being in person. So thank
Yeah.
you for letting me do this.
You can't read people's body language online. It's very
Or
hard.
hear the dad jokes, apparently.
You can't hear the dad jokes either. You're right. Okay, so our first slide, we're gonna go through the utility funds first. So this is kind of the format. And then we're gonna talk about the parks, capital projects fund and the bond. And then we'll go through, on our final slides, we will go through what the council has asked to discuss, things that we have would like to bring before you that have changed over the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks since we presented the budget. So we'll need some time for that. And then finally, we'll open up a discussion for the fee schedule, if you have any fees that you would like to discuss. So hopefully that works. We're going to start here with the changes from the prior year budget. Some things that were added, right? These are those requests that the departments brought to us. The first one is in the public utilities department in the general fund, but the costs are allocated out to the water, sewer, and stormwater funds. And Mr. Davenport requested a full-time utilities inspector be added to his team, and that we add one-time money to allow for a succession training period for our utilities engineering manager. That position, that person has been with the city for a very long time and has a lot of institutional knowledge, and we're going to need to transfer that over a period of time. They're retiring. Yeah, they're okay, Dave Murphy has said that he is going to be retiring. So we will need to replace him.
Wow.
So I know it's a huge change for our city. It's like a big culture.
Keep the mic on.
We wish we could do that with a
Right.
lot of people,
got a
right?
USB
Just plug
drive
it
on
in
his
and
shoulder,
transfer the
right?
knowledge. So we're going to need to hire that position, and we're going to need some overlap period of time. In the water fund, we are recommending that we add a dump truck with a bed with boxes and plow to the water fund, and that will also be shared as well with some other departments, right?
Our utility department shares vehicles that they're not
That's right.
being used, but what we'd really like to do is we have a construction crew and a repair crew, and they share things like trucks. And we'd really love to have the repair crew go and be able to repair a water service while the construction group stays at a job site and continues working. So this second truck allows us to split those two crews. While they have personal trucks that they can take, they need a truck that can transport aggregate and stuff like that. So that's the purpose of that truck. It's a 1-ton truck that can.
So are we using one-time money for the truck, or are we using fleet replacement money for the truck?
We're asking that the water fund fund it over into the fleet fund, and then the fleet fund will purchase it and own it. And then from going forward, so we would use one-time money to purchase for the original purchase, but going forward, we would amortize that over a 7 to 10 year period, depending on the truck that's purchased, and have that go into the ongoing fleet replacement so that when that truck's useful life is done, we have recovered enough to purchase the next one.
And how much is this truck?
I want to say it's close to 90,000 when you equip it with all the stuff that it needs. Again, it's not just a F-150, it's a 1-ton truck for being able to take aggregate to and from the site.
It's $95,370.
Heck, that's what Brian's F-150 cost last week.
Is that what it was?
So I'm talking about, that's what he went and Larry H. Miller and bought a truck for the other day, right, Brian? Yeah. So
Such
what
a-
is,
Such
so,
a deal then, right?
so what is it, just a one, what is it, a 1 ton?
It's a 1 ton.
So it's like a 450,
It's a 550.
550?
Mhm.
We're asking also to add a vehicle for the supervisor of the sewer fund. He's currently driving an F-150 truck, but his crew doesn't have a truck. So he is asking for a truck to support his crew and then to replace the vehicle for himself so that he can go to the different job sites. His vehicle will not be a truck, which is much to his chagrin, but he is willing to give his truck up to his crew. And then the streetlight fund is, you're gonna see the biggest change. So, the streetlight fund, when we really talked about this, we have 2 electricians that support the streetlight fund the entire time of their entire workday. Everything they do is in support of the streetlights. We have 3 electricians currently approved within the city overall. We have a master electrician, a regular journeyman electrician, and an apprentice electrician. That apprentice electrician will meet his apprenticeship to become a journeyman next year during this next budget year. So they're asking for that transition to be an electrician from an apprentice. But when we know that an employee is dedicating their entire workday to a utility and they're not being costed out to that utility because no personnel costs were being appropriated to the streetlight fund, we are recommending that those 2 employees be added to the streetlight fund because that's what they do their entire workday. And then they'd like to add another full-time position, which would be the apprentice position, should you approve the apprentice to become an electrician. So that there's a 3-man crew. That's necessary for them to support the activity that they need for the streetlight fund. We'll leave the master electrician who supervises these employees in the general fund because the majority of his work is supporting overall the city electrical program. So not just streetlights, but parks and streets and other places, facilities. So he does a lot of work throughout the city and we've kept him in the general fund. But that's where you see some movement out of the general fund into the street light utility.
So my question is, 2 years ago, when I was on the council, we had a question of the streetlight fund growing and growing and growing and not being used. Mostly from what I understand from 2 years ago, and I don't know it's changed a little bit since I came back, is that the majority of the funds are used for replacement of broken lights, or I'm guessing electrical wires right now that are being
Copper.
stolen. How much of our budget, and I don't need a strong number, but how much of our streetlight budget is being put towards new lights? Like in areas that need, like dark areas?
Sure. So over the last 2 years, we've dedicated quite a substantial portion of the reserves in the streetlight fund towards new lighting throughout the city. And I think I've asked Corey and his team to put together a map of the improved lighting system. And I think they actually have that available and maybe they've already sent that out once before. But it will show you all of the improved areas that have received new lights. They had hoped to do more work. It wasn't that they ran out of money. It's that exactly what you're talking about, the copper thefts hit. And so just as soon as they try and go to an area and make improvements, then another area is stripped and they're having to go back and fix it.
And by the way, just for the public as they're listening, the copper theft is happening all over the county. It's not just West
Everywhere.
Jordan.
Everywhere. And we're also working to try and a different kind of wiring where there will be aluminum wiring. And I think it's just a test program so far to see how well that's going to work for us. But by replacing that copper with something that's not quite as valuable to thieves, I think we'll be in a better position, but we're still in a testing phase for that.
Okay, so a year ago, we added, what was it, $1?
$1.
$1
Random.
streetlight fund to cover new lights. Now we're talking about increasing streetlight fund again. I'm not for that. We made a 60% jump last year I'm not sure why we ought to be raising, I know it's only 19 cents, but uh, I don't think we ought to be raising the streetlight fund. We raised enough money last year and that would be my, and part of that, and that whole dollar was supposed to be dedicated to new lights.
Right,
And-
but they're asking for a new electrician this time. This is separate from what happened last year.
Well, but we raised the rates from $1.81 to $2.81 last year.
But is that to cover lights or is it to cover lights and an electrician?
Well, it was to cover something. And I don't know what we, that's what I'm wondering, what we used that extra money for. Because I see in 2023, so here's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the workload and performance measures. Number of streetlights installed, actual 2023, 150. We raised the rates $1 and we're going to install the same number of lights that we did, even though we raised the rates $1. I don't get that. And so, what's that?
We're gonna do 50 less.
Well, and then this year we're doing 50 less, even though we raised the rates $1. And so I'm confused over this. Maybe somebody can dumb it down for me so I can figure this out, what's going on, because it doesn't make sense that we raised the rates $1 and we didn't get any more streetlights. And so I'm not gonna vote for a raise to raise rates when we generated that much money.
Can I jump in here?
Sure.
One thing I'm seeing is all the copper theft. Maybe it wasn't the fact that the money wasn't there to replace these lights, but that they just didn't have the time to replace or to put in new lights. Is that?
That's correct. Yeah, so we were, before I started at the end of September, but before that, from our streetlights technicians say, they were on a good rate of getting new lights installed and copper theft really ran rampant. Our journeyman electrician kept track of all his work orders, and from September through April, just over 80% of his time was nothing but copper theft, replacing copper lines. So that really slowed us down. Then we have our master electrician and apprentice electrician. An apprentice is only allowed to do so much electrical work underneath of a master's apprenticeship.
They're
So-
really good trench diggers.
Yep, they are. That's they dig trenches for us, pull wire, but it really slowed down the installation of lights throughout the city, new lights.
Okay, so we didn't install new lights. So that extra $1 a month was only to cover the cost of copper?
So what we're seeing in the new budget, though, the new budget proposal is that, and this is a choice of the council, right? That we were subsidizing the streetlight fund considerably because no personnel costs were included in the streetlight fund previously, right? It was just maintenance, new lights, and electricity. So there was nobody to maintain the lights, or the general fund was paying for it. So the philosophy is up to the council on if you'd like to transfer the personnel back into the general fund and continue to subsidize the streetlight fund by about $325,000. If you add another electrician, right? If you were to just say, hey, I'm just going to go back to just the 2 full-timers back into the general fund, not add the additional electrician, then you probably have about $250,000 of cost. That would go back to the general fund that we would need to fund in the general fund with some other revenue source, right? We
So
took
either
them
way,
out.
we're funding it. Is that what I'm hearing? Either way, we're
That's-
funding it.
Exactly. So you're either funding it through property tax, sales tax, something in the general fund, or we're funding it with the street light utility fund. Either way, you're funding
Which we really
electricians.
shouldn't do, right? With an enterprise fund, it's supposed to be self-contained,
Exactly.
so.
Yeah. well,
That was our philosophy, was when we
Unless you
met with
transfer
Corey
funds.
and he's like, hey, these 2 guys, that's all they do, all day, every day. We're like, oh.
Yeah. We ain't had the discussion on whether streetlights funds ought to be enterprise funds or not anyway, but
Well, that's true, but until they aren't, they are.
yeah.
Right.
But that may be a discussion for another day.
May I go back to your trucks? So we have this supervisor and currently he drives a truck, which I'm guessing he also drives his crew.
For the sewer fund?
No, you were just talking, she was just talking about it.
Yeah.
Sewer
The
truck.
sewer fund,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
switched to sewer for that truck? Okay.
Yeah.
So for the sewer fund, for the, yeah, okay, there it is,
So
for your
he-
truck. So, but what does he carry in the back of the truck?
The sewer crew truck that we're talking about, they don't actually have a truck. And so,
Right,
he-
but
he-
currently
he
that truck
lends-
is being used by
he-
him and his crew.
Can I?
right, and so if there is an emergency or if there is a problem, he has to go through the building and see if there is a separate truck that he can borrow to get to that location because his crew is borrowing his.
So normally he's just a public
It's
works.
just at Public Works unless he can find another vehicle. So the advantage of getting him this vehicle is in times when he needs to be places, he can be places without going and finding a pool vehicle. He used to use a COVID truck, but that truck has been assigned to another group.
Oh, can I chime in on this too?
A truck that we purchased during
But
COVID.
it, there are
It's
usually
only for COVID
white
times.
vehicles at Public Works, I guess. So I'm struggling to see why he needs a vehicle to drive.
There are times when he needs to go out into the field to
Right,
either
but
go
there are
help-
usually always white vehicles at Public Works. When I drive by, there's always white vehicles there. So yes, he has to go use a vehicle that belongs to the city. I don't see the issue.
Again, I don't want to speak for fleet, but from my understanding, it's not as easy as that. Those vehicles are either being repaired or they're someone else's vehicles that's there just to pick up equipment and then going back. It's not,
We
Um,
can share. We can share.
it's not it's not a one that's assigned to him.
We, Councilman Whitelock, if I can chime in on that. We have been pushing where we can pool use of the vehicles, like you're describing, sharing the vehicles. We don't need to assign every employee a vehicle when they don't regularly need vehicles. For example, we have reduced the vehicles we're using at City Hall to a few shared vehicles to do just what you're describing. In this instance, it's been inhibiting his job a little bit, and at Public Works in particular, there are often vehicles, a lot of vehicles out there, but they are often coming and going from different job sites depending on whether they're water, wastewater, stormwater, or streets employees. And so this
Ju-
one, and I
just-
do want to comment on Justin. This came in
Yeah.
as a truck request and I pushed back on why does a supervisor need a truck? And he acknowledged, yep, I just need a vehicle to get to the site, not a full truck. And so we're
Right.
working on reducing not only the number of vehicles, but the size of each vehicle to what is needed to get the job done.
Let's get him a bicycle. Our mayor rides the whole city on a bicycle. We should also get him a helmet. And if he's not good, knee pads and shoulder.
I would be in favor
Okay.
of an electric bicycle. We can give them a little upgrade.
Okay, I
Gotta
could do
have
that.
fat tires
I don't
for-
want,
Hey, I was
I
gonna
don't
go
want
for
people-
golf cart.
I don't want our supervisors to feel like they need to ride a bike to something that's important. If he's leaving and going somewhere, no, but I know, but still, I mean, I get it's a joke, but I see this, I don't think that they would ask us for this unless it was important. And he has to go to these places as a supervisor to either check on things or make sure that things are getting done correctly because I'm not gonna go out there. I'm not the sewer guy, but we hired a sewer guy to do that. And they're asking for a vehicle, so I don't see a problem with it.
Well, here's my question with a truck like this. If we buy a truck like this, what's the rotation life? Because if it's 7 years, by the time it's done, if it's only got minimal use, it's gonna have 20,000 miles on it. What, I mean, I've bought fleet trucks that were 15 years old that had 30,000 miles on it. So if we're gonna buy a truck like that, is it gonna be in a different rotation? Or are we're gonna say, oh, we put it in the full rotation, we gotta fully replace it now? Or do we have some older trucks that still run that we were gonna replace, that we can say, we've got some low mileage ones, we can keep it and we can continue to use it.
So let me assure you that, working with the fleet manager, that's our exact strategy. So, we do not just look at a date and say, hey, this vehicle needs to be replaced. There are some fleet vehicles that have low miles that do need to be replaced because they have high idle miles, right? So they keep track of how long, what are the idle miles, where have they actually been, and what work have they been performing, as well as their maintenance program. But we do not replace a vehicle just by saying, hey, it's 4 years old, we just need to replace it because. So it goes through a whole points and evaluation system before it even hits the fleet replacement plan.
Well, and we need to make
While we
sure that,
recover it, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, it's hard to see who's talking. We need to make sure that we're supporting our employees with the tools that they need to do their job, maintain a work environment where they feel supported and they have heightened productivity and morale. And this is part of that.
Okay, so I want to say, I agree with that, except that we also have to be conscientious of all of these costs and that our budget keeps going up. Every year, we're wanting more and more money.
It sounds like they're
And
being very
that-
conscientious with the vehicle, having the other vehicle with the employees and downgrading to a more smaller vehicle. So it sounds to me that they're being very conscientious about it.
What
We're-
type
We're
of
still
vehicles
adding,
being
though, that's
proposed?
my concern. We're adding personnel, we're adding vehicles, we're adding lots of stuff.
Residents.
What would be a smaller than a truck? A Maverick. What's a Maverick? Ford Maverick.
Ford Maverick, it's a small Ford truck.
It's a small car that they call a truck.
It's an escape with a bed. I should let Brian sit here, not me.
I actually like them. I think they're cool trucks. Kent, you had a comment.
Let's just say it's not a big ego boost for poor Justin Arreo.
Personally, I wouldn't mind, I mean, since we're talking fleet for the moment, sort of, I would love to see us looking to transition out of idling cars to electric cars. I mean, how do we electrify our fleet? What's that cost look like over the next 10 years? You know, I mean, they're expensive to repair. They take a long time, but
Replace the battery.
yeah, I mean, the
Okay.
technology is getting better and better all the time.
So,
So, yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry, Council Chair, I will say like, our Public Works group have been evaluating electric vehicles for the past 4 years. We've had a number in our fleet and have a variety of experiences with them. So we are very conscious about the full life cycle maintenance of vehicles, from the acquisition, the use, the fuel, the resale value, and we try to evaluate it holistically to minimize costs and maximize benefit.
We have hybrids too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing a Public Works admin car with, it was a Prius at one time, I think. So
One thing I've observed in doing ride-alongs is that city employees often do leave the vehicle running. I'm sure there's reasons for that. So moving into electric and hybrid, I think can be a good thing, because like a hybrid will turn off the engine automatically when it's idling, saving gasoline.
we all have.
The real, you mentioned idle. I'm gonna ask the question, and you, Denise, you talked about idle time as part of the wear and tear on the car. The question is, do they have to idle? Because because, you know, we've seen the stuff out of the Utah air quality and those kind of things, that idling cars is one of the worst polluters. And there have been a number of cities trying to reduce the idle times, education programs to reduce the parents idling to pick up their kids, all those kind of things. Do those cars have to idle and continue to put stuff in the air?
Can I respond to that? Our employees generally are pretty cognizant of that. it drives me nuts to see city vehicles idling for long periods of time. And then I'll go ask the department head, why is it idling? Let me give you an example. Just this morning, I had this rant with Chief Maxfield in the fire department. Why is this fire truck idling? And it was because the pumps inside the fire truck had to circulate the water to keep the water from freezing in the winter months. And so I had to continue to idle in order to keep all the water inside the truck from freezing. Likewise with police vehicles and many other vehicles, when they're on call, sometimes they have to continue idling because all the electrical equipment, the computers and everything in the car will drain the battery very quickly if it's not idling during a call. So there,
One other
I'm
thing I
with you.
saw,
I'm with you. I'm with you. It's driving me nuts if they're idling unneeded, but when I push on that, I often find that it is needed and there's a good reason.
when I was doing a ride along with the police, they left the vehicles idling with the dog in it, right? They don't want the dog to freeze or to get too hot. So there are reasons for sure to leave them idling. But I think looking into the hybrid fleets and also electric is to me, it appears to be the future and we shouldn't be afraid of it.
I agree. Sorry for the sidebar there. I didn't mean for it to become a discussion on its own, but
Well,
I
we're
do
on
want it.
slide 1 of 30.
I do, well, I do want it on the radar, right? As far as the city goes, as far as paying attention, because like Kent just said, it is where things are going. I mean, California is trying to make all of the cars in California electric cars. I'd be happy if we just adopted California emission standards, right? And made California cars Utah cars. They've been doing it for 50 years, so why can't we do it? That kind of a thing. So whatever we can do to move the needle in that direction, I think we're looking at. And I know it's kind of like when we hear from residents when they call us up and say, your utility crews are just standing around leaning on our shovels. It's like, really? How long did you stand and observe them for? Oh, it's just when I drove by, 4 seconds. Well, yeah, they were waiting for the other guy to go get the big backhoe out to come and dig the hole, right? I mean, come on, whatever it might be. So we have an admittedly limited perspective and limited idea of what actually goes on when we rely on you, but doesn't mean we don't have questions, and because we get those questions too. So thank you for the sidebar.
Do you have any other questions for this slide?
Well, going back to the streetlight fund.
You say dump bed. No, I'm just
So
Okay.
what we did, let me get down to the brass tacks.
How much are we spending on brass tacks?
Yeah, $1.99 at the dollar store due to inflation. What we're going to be doing is, even though we raised the rates $1 last year to go to new lights, what we're going to do is we're going to shift that money to allocated costs or the cost to cover the electricians. And we're not going to institute any more new streetlights, even though that was the intent of the city council a year ago. Does that sum it up?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to be, just so you,
Still doing 100, right? So you're going.
well.
They're
but that-
continuing, yeah, they're
but that- but
continuing
that-
to
but
develop,
that's
but
what
not
we
at the
were-
same level.
But that's what we were doing before we raised the rates $1. And so we raised the rates $1. So I'm going to get to the bottom line here. We raised the rates $1. We got no new streetlights, and we're not going to get any more new streetlights than what we were already planning for.
Well, you got new streetlights, so we did
Well, we got
150.
150, but the idea was that we were going to increase that.
So the dollar increase brought in about 350,000 extra dollars. The staffing for the electricians is $321,000.
Okay.
Well, let me jump in on this, just a slightly different perspective. The money was coming out of the city. If you hadn't last year, if the council had not taken that $1 extra, it was gonna come out of the city from another place, right? So all we're doing is saving that money so it can go toward roads or the fire department or the police, right? I mean, wherever it would have gone.
No, you're,
So we're allowing that money to go other places.
you're
But the level
right.
of service is still the same on the streetlights.
That's my point, is that we raised the rate $1 a month on every customer, and we didn't change any level of service.
Real
I
quick,
think
if
what we
if
did-
there wasn't for the copper problem, how do you think you would have done with that?
Oh, we'd have at least double, at least,
Okay.
when the lights installed.
So
Copper.
we keep forgetting that there was, it
Mhm.
wasn't like they stopped working. They weren't on their shovel like,
Oh, right.
Councilman
but-
Green.
Yeah, and
but
replacing
you-
LED, we only have 62 lights left out of the nearly 7,000 that need to be converted to LED. They did a lot of that this last year. So out of 7,000, only 62 to LED is pretty.
I just want to point out, it
That's
wasn't like
pretty good.
nothing happened. There was.
No, I
we
didn't say
had
there was
an
nothing
epidemic of
that
something happened.
happened. What I said was, we budgeted an extra $1 a year to increase streetlights.
Mhm.
We did not get the increase in streetlights that this was the council's intent. We didn't get the increased streetlights.
And why?
And,
Why? Why didn't we get them?
well,
Because the copper.
Because of the copper. That's why I'm going back to that.
well, it took the time away. But if it took the time away, then we should have had
Oh,
some surplus.
where'd that ball go? Bailey, where'd the ball go?
Pamela, you're not muted.
It's not me.
Oh. Somebody's online and chasing a dog.
But at the end of the day, we increased for $1, we got no streetlights, and now what we're doing is converting that dollar into employee costs, and we're not gonna get any new streetlights.
So in
More than we
essence-
already programmed for.
So in essence, you raised it $1, but you would have had to raise that dollar under this reevaluation, right? So it was raised $1 to add new streetlights. Maybe the question is if you want that dollar to continue to go towards dark areas, then we need to look at raising it another $1 to pay for the personnel that are maintaining the streetlights.
So I guess that's the question that I guess if I can rephrase what you're saying, is how much of $1's worth of streetlight fund goes to, when we say it's to replace or to install more streetlights, how much of that is personnel? How much of that is equipment?
So the dollar brought in $350,000, right? And of that 350, we are now saying, you can either say that 350 is just going to dark areas and bring these personnel back into the general fund. Then we're gonna need to figure out the general fund for $325,000, right?
So let me,
There's one or the other,
let me see if I
right?
got it right. So last time we raised it $1, we were hoping to get streetlights. We didn't get the streetlights because of the copper and things like that. This year, that dollar is not going to get us more streetlights because we're bringing in from the general fund, we're bringing in the
Or we're
the
still
stuff. So,
growing? Yeah.
so that dollar, if we hadn't gotten the copper, I think we all probably would have been a lot more happy with what the dollar bought us last year.
Yep.
And we
Yeah.
probably wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, I would say
in
that, I'd
that-
say the
in that
dollar
respect.
got 150 streetlights and then paid for replacement of a whole lot.
How
of
many
copper.
streetlights were taken out with the copper?
Oh, geez.
Oh my
I don't know
gosh.
if I can give you
Some
a
of them
number. I
multiple
can get
times.
that. We keep a spreadsheet of every incident with police report, how many outs.
Have we thought
Yeah.
about spray painting those silver
The copper,
Great, oh.
copper
We were
wires?
doing it during the day. Jordan
That's
Landing
We're trying
Boulevard
everything.
was
and
the
putting an
worst.
aluminum sticker?
And everyone drives Jordan Landing Boulevard. They did it while people were
Yep.
driving.
Yeah,
down
no, that's
Jordan
what
Landing
I
Boulevard.
understand is happening, but
Yeah.
But that's what I see the basic thing. I know it sucks that, previous council put in $1 hoping to get something, but something else stopped that from happening. And now that dollar is not going to go to that anymore because we're bringing in the personnel under this umbrella. So it's not going to go to that as well. So my opinion is I don't think we were out and wrong with what was done last time because we didn't know that the copper thievery was going to be happening so much. But-
And to boot on that, we didn't have to raise taxes in some other place
To pay for the
to pay
copper.
for that copper, or in this, for the new fiscal year, we're not gonna have to raise taxes somewhere else to pay for the personnel.
Yeah, it
because it's
sounds
gonna
like
come
if
from
that
the
dollar
light
wasn't
streetlight
put
fund.
in, we would have been hurting when it came to replacing all the copper stuff.
I know we're still on slide one, but
Yep.
I'm gonna ask my question again real quick. When you go to install a street light, how much of every dollar spent on that street light is labor versus part? So parts and labor, I just had a car in the shop this week, so parts and labor to do, to apparently recharge an air conditioning system is $300 at a dealership. That's all labor, right? There's $20 in Freon, right? And that's it, or R147 or whatever it's called. On a street light, how much of a dollar is parts, how much is labor?
That's a lot of it, I guess, would be depend on the street light. If you're just replacing street light for street light, it's probably 60-40, 60 for materials. If you're doing new street lights that you have to do conduit, electrical wire runs, it's probably closer to 80% material, 20% labor.
Okay, so if we didn't spend, so this is what Kelvin was saying, is if we didn't spend that money on new streetlights or streetlight replacements because we were chasing copper, were we doing the same ratio? Is replacing the copper 60-40 or 80-20?
No, again, a lot of it's depend, a lot of the issues, a lot of the time, they don't even still the copper. They cut holes in the steel poles so they can reach in, they can pull the copper. So then we're replacing the poles, which is expensive.
Right,
So a lot of
but
it,
that
it's-
whole,
it's
that
the-
whole process, what I'm
Yep.
saying is, if it's not 60-40 to 80-20, depending on the pole or the light or the wire,
Mhm.
and let's say it's 90% labor and only 10% materials, we use the same amount of labor, right? We had the same number of people doing the same amount of hours. We should have a lot of materials costs left over that we didn't spend on new lights, is what Kelvin's saying.
I see, yeah, yep.
You know what I'm saying?
And a lot of that, like I say,
Because
went
all we had to
to,
buy was the copper. We didn't have to buy a new pole and a new head.
well,
and a new-
a lot of the times we did have to buy new poles. When they're cutting holes in the steel poles, you have to replace those. We've had to replace
So if it is
junction boxes.
relatively equivalent, then it makes sense that there's not.
Well, but was there a
lot
lot
of money.
more streetlight repair than you may have put up?
A lot more.
See, so and that's where that balances
But
out.
that's
that
what I
way.
mean. is
But-
If it balances out, it
Yep.
balances out.
So really the question before us is, because yes, we voted last time, the purpose was to accelerate streetlight program. That's why we said yes to the dollar increase. But this year, the question is, are we wanting to take that dollar plus another 18 cents and use that for labor? Basically, that's the question before us.
Yes, yes.
So what she needs to know, if there's four or more of us, then we can move on.
Yeah, you're not hot, but that's okay.
Just at first blush, it seems like a reasonable request to me. And
Yeah.
Respect to you, Kelvin, if you disagree, it seems reasonable to me. 19 cents. So I would be in
Well,
favor.
It's really $1.18, right? It's
It's
really
really
$1.18 that
It
$1.18.
we're,
It was $1 last year.
we're
right?
But-
increasing it, but this year the question is, do we want to use that dollar plus another 18 cents?
But if we hadn't done
Just
it
for
last
personnel,
year,
right?
Yeah.
right, we'd have been a lot slower replacing these
Yes.
copper thefts. We'd be a lot further
If we don't
behind
do
the
it
eight
this
ball.
year,
Do
it's
it.
coming out of the general fund anyway. So-
I'm okay with it because I think that this fund is supposed to be one of those funds that is self-supporting, and clearly we just got told it's not. So for that reason, I'm supportive.
Right, same here.
Agreed.
Okay, next slide.
Hey,
Don't worry,
on
we'll
two.
come back to this one.
Slide 2. All right, this is, we've shown you this slide before, just illustrative of the utility rate increases as a whole before we start through the utilities. So you'll see that an average bill right now is about $97.14. This is not summer rates. This is just a normal month, like a January. And then the proposed bill would be $103.14, so it'll be a $6 increase overall. The majority of the increases outside of the stormwater increase and the streetlight increase. So the council, the increases of 63 cents are really control costs that you have. The rest of that is all passed through from our vendors. So really, there isn't a whole lot you can do with these rates unless you decide to use reserves.
Are we
Um,
making any headway in getting more of us on the sewer board to vote? How can we make that happen? Because that's really what needs to happen. We're being held hostage and it's wrong.
You'd answer that.
Greg, are you our person on the sewer board?
He is.
I am an alternate member. Dave's actually our sewer board member right now. Until he retires, then I'll be the sewer board member. The sewer board
That's a stinky job that
voting
somebody's
rights,
gotta do.
I know, the voting rights and the members are set by an agreement that we have between all of the agencies that contribute to that plant. That agreement is due to expire. When that agreement expires, or it needs to be either renegotiated or renewed, that would be the chance to bring up the question of whether it be voting rights or board members. I want to say in 28.
Do you have voting rights?
The city has voting rights, so the board member right now who represents the city has one vote on that board. There
So,
are 5 member
20%.
agencies.
no, I understand it. So we have someone on the board.
Right.
The issue is we are like 60% or something.
60% of the costs are
And-
given to the city.
Yeah,
And 20% of the vote.
that's the
No
issue.
taxation without representation.
But we have
No.
representation.
Well, no taxation
Not-
without.
not
equivalent-
equal to what we
equivalent
provide.
representation.
Sewer party.
And that's what we agreed to. I mean, the truth is, that's what the city agreed to a long time ago.
Right.
And
We may or may not agree to that.
we may or
again.
may not think that was a great idea, right? Looking
Okay.
back, that seems rather, generous of those groups who put more into the plan, and especially those who don't put much into the plant. But the time to do that is in a renegotiation period.
Yeah.
And council, if I can interject, so there was legislation this last session, changing how those boards are made up. And I haven't had a chance to really dig into that, but that's on my list to do. So my hope is that there's some latitude given to how that's structured for the future, based on participation rates, percentages. And I just want to add too that, I talked to Greg and Dave, who's actually the actual board member, Dave Murphy, Murray, sorry, Murray?
Murphy.
Murphy. Okay, I had it right the first time. Shouldn't have second guessed.
Dale's cousin. Just kidding.
Yeah. And so Greg and I are planning to just, I don't know how to put this, participate a little bit more along with Dave, just to try to get feel for their operations and what the future holds for them. So
The more you talk about it, the more it'll be acceptable when it comes time to renegotiate too. So just gotta kind of start whetting the appetite as you go.
I really don't know what's going to happen in that negotiation. I think there could be a lot of changes to that plant by 2028. The reason we're renegotiating is because that plant is very old. So this agreement that we signed was like a 50-year agreement. And so there are going to be a lot of costs because early on in this plant, there wasn't a lot of capital improvement that went into this plant. Brian Clegg, who was a past board member, was one of the first board members who said, we have to have a capital improvement plan. If I can, say thank you to Brian and anything, it's for that very purpose, right? There will be, I'm going to be transparent with you. There are going to be large costs in the future because we have taken the life of that plan, and unlike with the fleet fund that we were talking about, where we're taking money to replace it one day, that's not necessarily what they have out at that plant. And that's probably Denise's frustration with that plant is, why don't you have a plan to replace these things? Why isn't there a good O&M plan? And I think that's a caution for cities and for boards is don't get yourself in a position where you put all these costs to the end.
So if we're 60%, is it feasible for us to, instead of signing a new agreement, have our own sewer treatment plant?
That would be a lot of what that legislation is really looking towards, is looking to review these districts. And if they're not financially sustainable or operationally are not at a place where they're efficient in what they're doing, then they look towards the owners to see if ownership should transfer. But we would have to be super careful about that because we would be taking on a lot of
We don't want to.
replacement or maintenance, yeah. So South Valley Water, that's exactly part of our problem in the sewer district, is that when this agreement was in, we were sharing that with South Valley Sewer, right? So South Valley Sewer was a major user, we were a major user, and then there were 3 little baby users. And South Valley Sewer was frustrated with the level of service that they're being provided. They felt like they could do things more efficiently, and they ended up building their own treatment plant and have diverted a lot of their flows away from South Valley Water, which has shifted the burden financially onto the city. They also have plans to do a second treatment plant that is because they found a lot of efficiencies in what they've done. And so they have funding to be able to build a second plant, which will divert even more flows and only allow for emergency flows to go to South Valley Water, and that will shift additional burden onto the city as well.
I would say this, though, this is going to be a negotiation that will be very important for the city. I would not want to tip our hand as to what we could or couldn't do in an open meeting like this, but I assure you that Paul and Corbin and Denise are going to look at every option that we have before we renegotiate that.
Okay,
Wise words.
so let's go to the next.
Can I say
slide.
one thing on
Sorry.
this slide? Jordan Valley's increase today was 6% for
Oh,
us,
no.
not 3%. I don't think we're gonna need to change our utility rate increase for that, but the one that they adopted today was actually 6% for West Jordan.
Hey, I forgot to mention that earlier.
Great. Thanks for that good news.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right, so the solid waste fund,
Well- They're not doing a tax increase this year.
No, they are not
So
doing a
there's that.
tax increase this year.
all right, so we're gonna ask you to adjust when you adopt your tentative budget. Our request in the mayor's office for expense was about $125,000 lower than what we anticipate that expense to be. And that's related directly to the landfill costs that have come in. We were really estimating what the tonnage for green waste was and what the financial effect would be. What we have seen in March and April, while we believe and hope that it's a bit of an anomaly with that, because we're going to show you on the next slide maybe what that looked like. We believe that the budget that we brought to you for landfill expenses was short. So we're going to ask for you to add another $125,000 to the landfill operations line. We're going to ask for a 7% increase to the fee this year, and then ongoing in your 5-year plan, we need a 5.5% to 7% increase over time to keep that fund balance at about $500,000 to $750,000. We don't need a big fund balance in there, but we would like somewhere about $1 million, $500,000 to $1 million, and that would be used for emergency cleanup. Can you go to the next slide for a discussion? All right, so this helps you a little more. You can see our on the left-hand side in the green, the landfill disposal in tons. This is how much waste has gone to our landfill disposal and we've been charged for. The waste, you can see, was 50,000 tons in 2023, 51 in 2022. You know, 2020 and 2021 was when everyone was cleaning out their houses. So you could see that spike there. And then when everybody got all their junk taken care of, then you saw that tonnage decrease. In 2024, this is where we've seen the difference in green waste. And for the last 2 months, we have seen a tremendous increase. I've asked Brian to review the last 2 months because I'm pessimistic that they're correct, but we are currently at 57,300 tons for this year, and we're estimating 59,600 because green waste will be for July, August, September, and October the next year, right? So I've got to lift that up.
I have a pet peeve on this slide.
Okay, good.
The chart on the right is a zero-based chart. The chart on the left is not a zero-based chart.
True.
So looking at them head to head is probably a little misleading. The number that's missing on this slide is the function of the two numbers. So take the one on the right, divide it by the one on the left, you get a per ton, right? That's the number that I'm curious to see how that's changing.
So that's easy because that goes up $2 per ton,
right.
no matter what. That's why I didn't do
Right.
that
So
slide.
that, right, exactly. So seeing that graph trend would be enlightening on this as well, just because they're not equivalent I mean, you look at it, you go, wow, big spike, big spike. It looks the same. But the spike on the left isn't nearly as big as the spike on the right
Correct,
because it starts at 44,000 instead of at 0.
correct, yes. And the cost on the right hand, I don't know, left and right hand side is the landfill cost, and what we estimate we'll pay for this fiscal year is about 1.3 million, and then it will go up in 2025 to 1.56 million. Our tipping fees were $24 a ton this fiscal year and $26 a ton next fiscal year. Am I crazy? 24
FY
and-
twenty-five, it's 24 right now. FY 25 will be 26 a ton.
Yeah.
All right, next slide for a moment. This will be helpful as well. This is the cost per month. So you can kind of see that green dotted line. March and April, I can't trust the April number. Brian's gonna do an audit on it. I just don't feel comfortable with it, but maybe we were cutting down a bunch of trees or something. I don't know.
We're looking into it. I think a lot of the cost is, well, some of the cost is now that we're dumping green waste in the same truck and it's being charged as mixed waste. It was $6 a ton. Now it's $24 a ton. That's gonna be some of the increase. But I've got to see, I'm looking at the invoices now, because different divisions haul every day someone's hauling something to the landfill, usually in different divisions. I got to make sure that isn't included in this tipping fee charge. And that's what we're looking at right now.
It was higher than we've ever seen. It was $194,000 that month.
Public Works dump day?
It includes everything.
Um,
But April, we didn't have a dumpster day. We had it in May.
Dumpster days was in May.
And see, my May
Well,
number,
that's
I
the
got
record.
today from them and it's down. So that's
Yeah, it's
why
back down now.
Yeah.
That's what, there's an anomaly. We got to figure out what an
Something's wrong.
anomaly is
So,
there.
but is the addition of the green waste into the landfill, does that account for just the gap between the red line and the previous year's lines, right? The red line is next year.
Correct.
I kind of
So-
brought my
so
estimate
the-
down
the
because I don't
$6
trust
to the
that.
$24 for green waste, that's that.
Yes.
That's not the spike in April.
Exactly,
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Well,
exactly.
it's actually, Councilmember Jacob, it's actually going to go to $26 a ton in
Right.
FY 25. So it's even,
Right, but that's what's pushing the whole line up, right?
Mhm.
that's,
far as-
yes.
Yeah, okay.
From that yellow line that
And
was
why it's
fiscal year
closer in the
23.
winter time is because in the winter time, there's not very much green waste.
Yeah, the green waste cans will be put away in the winter. We won't be.
Right, but are we still gonna pick them up? Cause they're just trash cans now.
No.
No, we're not. It's still running the same schedule as green waste.
They charge us by the number of cans they. pick
Yeah,
up.
so in the winter
Ace
time,
will not pick up a green waste can outside of our contracted period
Oh,
of time.
because it's in the
it is,
contract.
it's part of our
regardless of-
contract. So during the winter, there's so many cans that they don't pick up that we don't get
We're gonna
charged
go
for.
buy a couple of cans of plastic dip and paint it green, paint it black if you want it picked up in the
There you go.
winter time.
Good.
Get that silver thing.
Just use Bob Silver paint.
Okay,
Oh, plastic dip you can peel off in the summertime, make it green again.
please. Yes. No, this is the time for you to discuss the solid waste fund and ask any questions. Brian's available for you.
Okay, I have a question on the dumpster program because I want to know, we changed the way it worked because of the cost, but when I go there and I see how many employees are there, I want to know what it's costing us currently to run the dumpster program versus what it used to cost us. Are we doing it the right way? Basically, so I want to know what the numbers are.
I can get those. I can almost guarantee though, doing dumpster days is gonna be cheaper than doing when we were doing the dumpsters out in the neighborhood for free. Cause all we had going then was well, Ace would pick them up, but if we had our dumpster cans out, we would have to send a truck to go get them, but it's gonna, the way we're doing it right now is gonna be cheaper.
Can I
It's a-
interject as well? When we were just putting dumpsters out in neighborhoods, they were being abused. Like putting chemicals in there, mattresses, paint, tires. That's not happening at the dumpster days because employees are right there as people are unloading. So I think that is also a
We do
cost
make-
savings.
To your point, Councilmember Shelton, we do make we separate a lot of the debris, so we separate out all the metal. So we make a little bit of money back even recycling. I think we made, roughly $2,500, $3,000 with the last, dumpster event. So we get a little bit of revenue back from the recycling side of things. I can get numbers. I can get some cost on what it costs to, run the dumpster.
Our other
waste.
benefit, from talking to Brian, is also that we separate green waste and put in a separate dumpster. And then we took it to Diamond Tree Rental. So tree rental. They're
They're
not
just
di-
Diamond Tree.
Tree. Like we're renting trees. Diamond Tree, and they used it as green waste, so it didn't go to our landfill and we weren't paying that tonnage for dumping green waste.
They
So we're able
actually
to
ex-
keep it clean.
They actually accepted it for no charge. The
Kaylee,
green waste
it's a-
event.
It's
Thank
a
you.
good
I'm
request.
still
I
curious
think it's
to
a
know what the
good,
cost difference is. That's
Yeah,
why I
we can
asked you,
get that.
Denise, a long time ago, because I wanted to know.
I think the main thing is when this was decided, what, 4 years ago? Denise and the team came to us and said, for the free dumpster program, which, let's remind us, this isn't free. We're paying for this dumpster program. In order to keep doing that free dumpster program, it was going to cost a lot more. So they presented the current program of $50 for one time, and then the events, which is what, 3 per year or 2? 3. So it was presented to us and they said, we can do it this way and save money, or we can go back to the free, not free dumpster program, and it's going to cost this much more. So I get what you're asking about how much does it cost for the free ones, but
You're right, except that we also asked for some different opportunities for the residents, and we haven't
Right.
been given those. When we were given these two ideas, when Denise came and said it's costing us $360,000 for that free money, for dumpsters, yes, we did say, okay, but we also asked if there was a way to have something for like Jennifer Andelin's thing. And that's never came forward, so.
have we pushed for that to come forward? I haven't heard
ha-
anybody.
It has been, Councilmember McConaughey asked every year.
No, he asked every year to go back to the free program.
He also asked what else we could do. But yes, his
Yeah.
main objective, he preferred to have.
So
the
I'm just saying,
neighbor-
when I was on the council, they did present to us
You're
the
right.
options.
You're right, but we've asked
And-
for other options.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
We do provide a neighborhood dumpster program when requested, but they have to come for a fee waiver to the council. So it just needs to be requested. Are there any
Free.
other?
I'm gonna
Chris.
ask
Yes.
if we're raising solid waste fees for 10% on the basic, it's almost 10% on the basic service, 2076 to 2221. Why aren't we raising the dumpster rental rate?
That would be up to the council. They raised it, you raised it last year. It went from 50 to 75, I believe.
Yeah, I thought I remember us raising it last year.
Yeah.
We did. But my
Did we raise the
question's-
we raise the second rental as well, or just the first?
Both.
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 My
Okay, I couldn't
question
remember.
is if there's this inflationary cost for just tipping fees, if there's an increased cost in tipping fees, then why aren't we charging an increased cost in dumpster fees for the increased cost in tipping fees? That seems like that would be reasonable at that point in time, is to increase this at least to cover the increased cost in tipping fees. Cause otherwise we're anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's interested in doing that or not. I would think that we'd want to do some sort of,
Like in increase to that. I would probably recommend a $5 increase for the tipping fees. Brian, would that be about right?
This is for the neighborhood dumpster
2
program?
ton,
No,
it's
this is for
typically 2
just the
tons per
dumpster rentals.
or more.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
we're roughly, how we do it now, we actually have a machine that Ace brings and it crushes all the all the trash as we enter, it, put it in the dumpster, so we fit more. Before it was like 2 tons, 3 tons you're hauling out there. Now it's upwards of double that in a dumpster. So we're actually running less loads in the long run because we're compacting everything now. Are you talking $5 per ton on the more on the dumpsters? So.
I would have to add the amount of tons that you would estimate as average for a dumpster rental and then add it to the rental fee.
Rental fee.
Yeah, for me, that's not a direct cost that we're passing on though, because it's $75, right? Even the $250 rental after the first is subsidized by the rate.
Correct.
Yeah.
So for me, this isn't an inflationary thing. It's just if we don't adjust it every year, which we can or can't, it's just how much are you subsidizing, right? It's
Exactly right.
it's not necessarily we didn't set this fee as well, we want to pass along 20% and subsidize 80% and whatever. We just said we want there to be skin in the game by whoever rents it. And then we want there to be skin in the game if they want to do it 100 times a year. We want them to, start covering more of that cost in order to keep it fair for those who aren't using it, right? Because they're paying for it too, free, like Chad said. So for me, this discussion is just, I'm okay with the percentage that we're subsidizing sliding from year to year a little bit as we adjust it as kind of things go along. And we adjust it more as a response to how much the fund needs to keep going as opposed to specifically an inflationary thing that we just tack on every year. That's just my thoughts on this one, but
And,
that's just my thoughts.
and you're right, but the counter to that is that from 2076 to 22-21, that's part of that almost $2 a month is subsidizing the dumpster rental program.
You're right. Absolutely right.
And so,
You're right.
if we, if we increased the true cost of the dumpster rental program, could we reduce the cost of the basic service a little bit? I don't know if there's what the cost would be or what the trade-off would be. So that was my question.
My concern about doing that would be disincentivizing the neighborhood groups from getting together and having the cleanup programs and I know we've waived those fees also, but we can't waive it for everybody.
If they came in and
We
if
can
they
if they
came
ask.
in and if they came in and presented a plan, we don't hit, well, and in the enterprise fund, when it's separate fund, I mean, there's a statutory cap on the amount of money that you can approve for fee waivers. We never get close.
And the thing I wouldn't want to do, I don't want to be subsidizing a business owner who's out there making money with our dumpsters, right?
Businesses don't rent our dumpsters, do they?
Yes, that was one of the problems from the original free program. We had some places that were getting our free dumpster over 10 times a year.
Well, but if they're a business using our dumpster, we should be.
It was a they're home-based businesses,
But
right? Like
you know where
construction
I'm going
companies. Yeah.
philosophically is the dumpster rental is to clean up the city, not for, and so. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay, solid waste fund. We're good? Okay, let's go to the next slide. We'll go to the water fund. So the water fund is gonna have a 2.5% fee increase this year with a 3.5% fee increase anticipated for the next 5 years. That might have to accelerate depending on the cost of water, as it moves forward. This year, the difference between revenue and expense is about $8.5 million, but that is investment in capital infrastructure, which we'll go over in just a moment with the next slide.
Why is revenue dropping from year to year?
Because people are conserving water.
Right. This is one of the things. So on the water board, they have what they call it a revenue stabilization fund.
Uh-huh.
It's a fancy word for surplus, but it's a separate surplus fund that they put money into when people use a lot of water, they put the excess money into this revenue stabilization fund for the years when people don't use a lot of water. Because our cost for water is take or pay, right? It's how Jordan Valley works, is we pay the amount whether people use it or not use it. We buy the same amount of water, or we pay the same amount of money whether we buy the same amount of water or not, up to a certain point, and then it's, then there's a tier on top of that. But we may want to look into a revenue stabilization fund for our water fund for that reason, because on a wet year, we're not going to collect any money, but we're going to have the same expenses.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think having a revenue, a savings account, a rainy day fund, if you will, that'll build up when we collect more money, and we can draw on when we collect less money. And because it's not based on the rate that we charge, it's not based on anything that we can control. It's based on how much people turn on their sprinklers, which less is actually more. It's a good thing, but right? Exactly. Exactly. They want
Probably
us.
won't go over well.
Jordan Valley seems like quite a racket, doesn't it? Because they require us to buy so much water, and then they tell us to tell our residents to use less. I don't quite, hardly seems fair. We should have somebody on the board bring that up. Anyway,
Okay, next slide.
so.
All right, the acre feet purchased, you'll see here. Interestingly, right, in 2020 and 2021, we had more water use. Obviously, people were home during that time period, and then, and this has a lot to do with weather as well. What is it? Yeah.
I'll take responsibility for that one too.
The other thing there too is our use of wells. I can control how much water I buy from Jordan Valley based upon the wells, but it's really difficult to estimate that because we use our wells in the summer months, but they charge me for, it's the whole year period. So I have to guess for the whole year, basically in 3 months. So a lot of times I'm trying to get as close to 20,000 acre feet as I can, because I don't want to pay for water we don't use. And that's a real possibility this year. It's been cold and wet. So I'm really nervous about that.
I turned my sprinklers on this week.
Yeah, I heard someone
Right.
said, I haven't turned on my air conditioner or my sprinklers yet. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I have.
So that is every year, that's the tightrope that we walk, and it all happens between June and the 1st of September, basically sets how much we do.
Can I
for the
ask,
whole
and
year.
maybe this is, I don't know if this is a Denise or Greg question, but where did we get to the point where we are required to buy so much water rather than just buy the water we need?
That's how Jordan
I
Valley
understand the
works.
contract, but
All of
how
their
did we ever
member
get to that
agencies.
point? Like, I'm sure it wasn't like that 25 years ago, right?
Yeah,
has been.
But
Always like that.
I don't know how, again.
I mean, you would
there could
think,
be
you would
some
think,
changes
hey,
in the
use
future
less
with that
water
as well. I don't
and
know.
Pay less money,
and
right?
don't pay for the water you don't use, but no.
It's because of the infrastructure that they have to have. So they can't build a smaller reservoir than what they need, right? They build the one that they think they have. And it's the same thing with their water treatment plant or their water rights that they buy. So they have to purchase just in case. And so that's why they make communities do. Right.
No, I get
They're
that,
just
but
trying
I
to
mean, it's
cover the
like me,
fixed costs.
let's say the grocery store said, in order to buy milk, you've got to buy 50 gallons a year. If not, we're still going to charge you for 50 gallons.
So let me be clear. Let me
I
be
don't buy
clear
that much
though,
milk.
that, the take or pay, yes, we would pay that money, but it goes towards our account for years when we do use more, and it stays on account for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, just for 5%. So it's just for which is still a lot, but it's still 1,000 acre feet. But so we try and be really careful with that. So that's I'm always judging how much we use our wells to be able to get to the 20,000, because that's the spot that I want to be in.
So when you build a new reservoir, or a new tank,
Uh-huh.
you have to go back to the contract and get a higher contract to fill the tank?
A higher contract.
Again, I think what's happening is Jordan Valley has taken the risk, and they're sharing that risk with all the communities. And it may feel on our part that, wait a minute, we're 70% of the risk and you're only 30%, but we didn't have a lot of choice when those agreements
Goes
were
back
made.
to holding us hostage.
Greg has been really good though at managing the wells to
Really
say,
good.
look, this water, like it or not, it's maybe expensive, more expensive than the wells, but until we hit more than 20,000 acre feet, it's paid for. Use it all up first. So he turns on and off those wells carefully to see that that number doesn't dip below that take or pay amount.
And that also, that usage also affects our peaking factor, which affects the water
The
rate that we
price and-
pay.
Absolutely.
Jordan
So we
knows.
try and use the wells in our peak month so that we can keep the peaking factor low. Last year was really strange because we had a warm fall. Otherwise, for the whole year, we were flirting with not getting to 20,000. So I was so sweating bullets in September because we were not going to get to 20,000. And then October was really, really warm, abnormally warm.
I remember being very jealous because it was my 25-year anniversary. Yeah, last October. And the year we got married, October was like 32 degrees and we were freezing our tails off when we got married. And then we have this 70-degree anniversary and it's like, this is hardly seems fair.
So just so you know, it's always a balancing act. I can take probably 4,000 acre feet at any one year from our wells. I don't do that if I don't have to. So I'm always trying to decide what we use. Last year, we used 1,000 acre feet from the wells.
And we're always improving our well capacity as we scout for and build and more
There-
wells and stuff.
Right. So, but anyway, we're trying to be careful. And the reason why, if you know that we increased that to 20,000 is because we thought that 21, 22 was going to be a huge difference. And what happened was, I think in this area was the time when you passed the tiered rate schedule. And look at there was a huge difference. It wasn't just because it was a wet year. It's because you prioritized water as something that costs more the more you used. And I think that's kind of what we saw. Anyway.
Next slide. Okay, this is the list of the capital project that are proposed for the water fund, which is the majority of your investment in the budget. So the cemetery tank and transmission line, that's an ongoing project. It's already underway. It's finished with design, and how much construction are we under? I like it.
They've probably spent about $500,000 of the 8, 9. By the time the budget year is over, they might be another $1 million into it. Costs a lot up front. They're good. I think that by the time July gets here, they'll have poured the floor of that cemetery tank.
So we're carrying forward the funds that were originally approved in this, for this project and carrying them forward into, the next fiscal year. The 13th West Water Line replacement is another large investment of $2.2 million. And then we also are going to pay a developer for upsizing water line at Copper Rim. And that'll be 1.5 million.
We are getting such a deal out of that. They are building us a water line from 70th South at about 67th West, all the way up to SR 111, from 70th South at SR 111, all the way down to 7600 South.
Wow.
And we're only paying the upcharge fee. We are not paying the cost for what it would have cost originally. Their original development needed a 12-inch line and we needed a 16. That price would be triple that price if we were having to pay for the whole thing.
And we gave them much more density
Yes,
and
we
less
did.
commercial. So I think it's a win-win.
You're right, it is a win-win, but at least you're getting your money back, right? Just so you know, you are getting your money back for that
And all it
project.
cost was some political capital with the density, right? I mean, that's how that works because
Yeah,
density's cheaper on a lot of city services, so.
right.
Okay, so you've got $13.8 million of capital projects in the water fund, which is why we're bringing the fund balance down a little bit. We'll end the year with about $19.2 million of fund balance in this fund. So, Chair Jacob, when you talk about having a sustainability, we watch that fund balance very carefully and ensure that we're able to fund not only our 5-year plan, but also graduate those water rate increases over time for our estimates.
Yeah, we kind of do have that water
We do.
stabilization fund. We just don't call it that.
We don't call it-
And we
yeah.
don't separate it out from kind of a general reserve.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that might be an idea. Just so that we, when we look at that square root sign that we saw on the last sign, right?
Yeah.
when we look at that, we have a specific plan in place for that money. It doesn't come out of this bigger gushy fund that we draw
We
all
have that
sorts of things out of.
dedicated towards that,
Yeah,
to that source, sure.
yeah.
So-
It's just a thought. It's just an
It's a good
idea.
thought.
I wondered why Jordan Valley called it that until probably 3 or 4 months ago when budget discussions were starting.
You
and
can't
the light
control
bulb went
weather.
off.
Can't
Yeah.
control the weather. With this fund, just to give you a heads up too, our lead and copper survey is due in October. We are doing field surveys now. There are approximately 6,000 homes, or more that are built before 1988 that could have a lead and copper problem. So in future budgets, when I have got all of that quantified, you'll be seeing, instead of big capital projects for cemetery and other tanks, you'll also be seeing a yearly bill for us to go remove lead and copper services and lines.
Where are we at with AMI?
We have all of our residential meters have been converted to the tower read system, the 4G meters. We have just a handful of commercial meters left, but we are not, all of ours, 99.9% of all the meters are now read through AMI.
If they're all being read through AMI, when are we gonna roll out the app for the residents? That's not your question, Greg. That's for Corbin and Paul.
My understanding is the target is still July. Is that, am I?
I know that Tawny is preparing a presentation for the residents. Whether that is going to end up as a postcard with them going to a website or something, which they will be getting something this summer. They've talked about July, and they're preparing that so they can send that out and offer the app to anyone who wants that. Okay, but that's Tawny's target, is after the Western Stampede.
So I'll dig in, talk with Corbin and make sure that we have a more firm date than just saying next month. So get that out to you guys.
Soon. We're trying to pace it with the Western Stampede and other things that may hit a lot of phone calls. We anticipate as we roll it out, there will be a rush of phone calls on. Not sure I know how it works, or help me set it up the first time. And so we're just trying to kind of pace it a little bit, but with that very soon.
In our test, about half the people who try and log in are unsuccessful the first time for one reason or another. And so we anticipate a lot of phone calls. Usually the login problem has to do with them not reading the bill correctly. Sometimes there are zeros ahead of their account that they don't count for. So they put in what they think is the account number and they've left out a 0 or 2 in the front, so it doesn't notice them. Or you have to spell the name correctly. It has to be the same. So if you have a space or you have a capital letter that's missing, it won't recognize it. And so those are the things that they have to explain in the flyer to cut down on the calls. Otherwise, it's about half the people just don't log in right.
Okay.
Next slide. Here, we're gonna move from the water fund to the sewer fund. What we're doing with the slides and the way that we have presented your budget is to assist you in understanding how much you're investing in the distribution system, which is getting this sewer product from wherever it's generated to the treatment plant, and then how much is the investment in the treatment plant. And then I also added additional line for the Southwest Quadrant expansion because that was funded by ARPA and then also a loan from the CIP fund. So that was about a $10 million project. And that was started in 2022 and has kind of gone over 2 fiscal years. It'll be completed next fiscal year. So you can see the reserves. We're going to be dipping into the reserves, but again, that has a lot to do with some of the capital projects as well as being able to lift this rate a little bit at a time. 10% seems like a lot, but the lift that South Valley Water Reclamation Facility, because their capital project plan was delayed further than it probably should have been. The request from us is about $2.7 million. It's doubled and tripled since we began this several years ago. Go to the next slide for a moment. Okay, so this is a little more helpful. This is shown in millions of dollars so that it's a little easier to read. Our revenue is on that top line, and then our distribution cost, including capital projects, is on the next line, and then the treatment cost is on the next line. So you can see that what we're doing is we're investing about 35 to 40% of our revenue is dedicated towards ours part of the system. And then the rest of that revenue is really dedicated to the treatment plant. In talking to Corbin, I don't have a lot of experience in my past with a treatment plant. I've always worked with South Valley Water, and it was not in the same kind of model. They did their own billing, so I didn't have to do that, right? But in this model that the city has, in Corbin's experience, I believe this is an okay distribution, right? Is that what you're saying, what you were saying before? It's
Yeah,
okay. It's not
it's-
great. It's okay.
Yeah.
Which way would be better?
We
Where
should
would
have
you like
more
it to sit?
dedicated toward our distribution and less towards the treatment plant. But because maintenance was not taken care of when it should have been, we're stuck in this situation.
It can
the treatment
vary,
plant.
in fairness, it can vary a lot from community to community, depending on the newness of their plant. I mean, treatment can be very expensive. And if you don't manage those costs well over long periods of time, you end up with big spikes in sewer costs.
The other problems at the plant that they've encountered has been the state has changed some of the regulations. We haven't been hit as hard as some of the other districts. Salt Lake County had to completely remove and replace their sewer treatment plant because of the new nitrogen and phosphorus rules. Our plant was a little bit more forward thinking, and so we have had to do less, but there are a lot of plants that have been hit harder than this. Some did get ARPA money though. Provo did get ARPA money to help them with upgrading some of their plant.
Well, and part of our payment to South Valley Water Reclamation is for a bond, because when we did opt into the phosphorus and grit and nutrient, we bonded for that portion of our contribution. We weren't able to come up with that up front.
Right. And so that's one of our bonds.
Right.
So you're saying this isn't as crappy as it could be?
Right. It's not as
Somebody had to
crappy
say
as
it.
it
Zach,
could
you have
be.
taken the mayor's place tonight.
All right, next
It's not
slide.
here.
These are the capital projects. So the top portion are the capital projects that we're requesting from the city. So we're gonna finish the sewer line expansion that was funded by ARPA. We have a 7,800 south upgrade for 800,000. And then we have investment into our system, the maintenance of our system. That's not quite at the level that we would like to see it at, but it's all that we can sustain with our current rates. So
What are the costs on the 7,800 line that we just finished that are gonna have to go into next year?
There is some extra costs. They're not reflected on there. But my guess is that 78 South 154 replacement might get, again, I don't know that it comes in next budget year because they're finished, right? But there were change orders on that Denise is going to see that will be,
That will come after. the
that
end
will
of the
come
month.
after and will affect the line. And we might have to come back at some time to talk with you about that, but
I was just like, I thought we did that already.
yeah.
So what's the project we're doing on 13th West from 90th to 92nd? And why wasn't that done when we had the street ripped up for phase 1 of the 13th West project?
So, that is a master plan project, but it also helps a developer. I'm gonna try and pay just for an upsizing on that and not the full cost on that. To give you a heads up, the bill from UDOT was double what they told us it would originally be. And there's a lot that goes into that. That's probably the right number at the end of the day. When we pay UDOT for just going out of the intersection, plus we have to go another 600 feet more to Stock for the
Okay.
Hidden Cove.
But didn't we have the
subdivision.
road ripped up here a year ago?
Not
haven't-
in that area.
Yeah, not in that area.
Thought we repaved 13th West from 90th to to Glover
No.
Nursery.
Not the entire, the
This is in front
entire
of
road.
Stock.
This
Okay.
is,
in
this
front
is
of
more
Stock-
south.
Stock.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I won't pass Stock with this
Okay.
project.
Okay, are there any other questions about the sewer fund or comments or changes? We are watching very closely and we are strongly positioning our opinion on a sewer rate increase with South Valley Water. So we are being very vocal about our concerns with our residents and making sure that there's some cost containment in the sewer fund.
well,
Last year, we did get them to lower
Mhm.
what their proposed was by quite a bit. Because they were gonna ask for something that was another upfront cost, and we got them to change that so that it was over a period of time that were over more years so that we could afford it easier. So there was a lot of concessions that the board made last year at the request of West Jordan.
see, my concern with the reclamation facility is we're planning a 10% increase over the next 6 years.
Every year, year over year.
We're doing 10% every year over year. And if South Valley comes back in 5 years, we're gonna double our sewer rates. And I don't know how we can justify that to our residents, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't
Um,
know how people are gonna, you know.
Paul did give me some advice the other day when we were talking about this, because I said, I'm concerned because our average sewer rate for our resident right now is about $36 a month. And I know that I'm on South Valley Water and mine's $33 a month and they just increased it $5. Before that, it was like 28 or whatever. And so I thought we're out of whack. I'm like, we're 10%, but more than South Valley Water. And that frustrated me. However, Paul shared with me that his sewer rate where he was previously was $46 a month. So I felt a little better about where we are and where we're going. And I feel like we're doing as much cost containment as we can. I'm not saying that's great, but I'm just saying we're doing our best.
I mean, obviously, we want to make sure that plans are going into the future to make sure that repair and replacement is actually happening, as well as planning for growth, and so that we're not actually postponing some of those things to happen in the future rather than taking and addressing it now. And that's one of the things I want to get with Greg and Dave and Dave, trying to remember which, I think it's Dave. He goes by Dave. Anyway, want to make sure that we actually get with them and understand their operations and make sure that we have a handle on where they're going so that we can actually better answer to the residents and help you as council members to be able to do the same as far as where those rates are going to go, to make sure that they're getting the service that they should get at the price that they should get it at.
We'll work hard on your behalf. Next slide. All right, this is the stormwater fund. This is one that we have more control over. The revenue estimated for 2025 is $5.9 million. Our expense is 8.7 million. So we're going to be using reserves. We've got some large capital projects in here, but we do have a high amount of reserves. Those reserves are not left to be unused. We have a 5-year plan that you want to review with some very large projects in there that have to do with Barney's Creek. And that's an area that we have most concern with, and we have to make a larger investment in. So let's go. We're doing a 7% fee increase and a 7.5% fee increase anticipated year over year. That could change. Not the 7%, we do need that, but the 7.5% year over year is really going to be dependent on how those capital projects continue to move forward and the cost of them. So that part I'm not super confident on, and we're building that fund balance with that 7.5%. So we'll see where that goes. But for this year, 7%. Next slide. This is the list of your capital projects. You have $3.8 million of capital projects. We're starting on that Ronwood detention basin improvement and some of the other Barney Creek culvert projects. So that's the majority of our investment, as well as an investment by the Gardner Village Track Station. So that's all I have for the stormwater fund. If you want to have any questions for Greg.
By the way, the Barney's Creek Regional Detention Facility goes west of SR 111 at about 8,700 south. That $500,000 is 10% of what I think will be the construction cost for that project.
Yeah, looking at the 2 years after that.
Huh?
You said west of U-111?
Yes, west of U-111.
That's the detention pond that was part of the Jones Ranch.
They've given us a
development
concept
plan.
location. Yep, they've given us a concept location, and I should have somebody hired this month to start the design on that.
Let's go.
And
Going on Executive Drive, stormwater, sewer.
The
Is it all just messed up?
The
It's all messed up.
stormwater project there that's just part of the funds for that project, that there's also some CDBG funds and others that are available.
I just noticed there was also a sewer project as well. So is the whole street just,
This is just for the storm drain project right now. We still have a water project, but we don't have all the easements for that.
Yep.
I don't have a sewer project there, but we do have the storm and the water. The storm drain is because at the end of the street, we don't actually have a storm drain system. And so we've had past flooding in that area. We're trying to eliminate the past flooding.
Don't worry, we'll make sure that each project, they dig up and repair the street in between them. So, just kidding.
The project should start by August, the Executive Drive Storm Drain Project.
Okay, next slide. Okay, this is the streetlight fund, one we've spoken most about already. We're gonna look at a 6.75% fee increase, which is 19 cents, and 6.5% fee increase anticipated after that, thereafter. The revenue is 1.3 million and the expenses 1.5 million. So we're dipping into fund balance already. We'll be dipping into fund balance also in 2024. Our reserves are pretty low, but we're trying to kind of manage the fee versus the service level. So our reserves are estimated to be about $350,000 next year, or 26%. Next slide. All right, so we're getting, oh, this is not it. Never mind, go back. All right, so that's the streetlight fund. As you know, we're adding, go back, yeah. We're asking you to add the electrician, and then we're asking to transfer the personnel over to the streetlight fund. So there's no more discussion about that. We're gonna assume that you've approved that additional electrician. Okay. Next slide. This is the one that you've been asking to talk about. This is the parks capital projects. This is where we will start a discussion about the proposed bond proceeds and the possibility of expanding the multipurpose fields, and as we are losing some of them as well. So we have other contributions of $930,000. That includes a $200,000 grant that we did not know about when we prepared the mayor's budget, and so that number is a little different than what's in your book. We received a $200,000 grant from the Utah Thank you. I'm like, all of a sudden it messed up. Office of Outdoor Recreation. Originally, we decided to turn down the grant because they required us to invest $2 million for their $200,000. However, we went back to the negotiation table and they said, we'll accept your original budget of $300,000 to match the $200,000. So we're going to invest $500,000 in Sycamore Park and move that project forward. The city's portion will come out of impact fees. Bond proceeds, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then there's an interfund transfer. That just means I had money in the general capital projects fund that I needed to bring it over into here to make this one work. We have $5.9 million at the end of the day in park impact fees that will continue to need to be spent. There are no reserves for general park projects in this fund, held in this fund. I hold them all in the general CIP fund. So let's go to the next slide for a moment. Yeah, no, you're fine. Go back.
Just that Sycamore's Park, can you explain that, what that 200K, 500K?
Disc golf and a few,
For that,
some bare bones disc golf course, 18-hole disc golf course. Hopefully get some trailheads to interconnect with, we're gonna put some trails around the park and also the trailhead that's
okay,
is
and
already there.
this is the open space park. This
Yep,
is
yep,
the-
down the whole
this is
ravine
in the
area.
weeds,
Yep,
not the two
not the
little
two existing
playgrounds.
parks, nope.
Okay, because those need some attention too.
Yep, yep.
The grass and stuff.
Are, just on that disc golf course, are we putting any of, I don't know, are they called holes? I don't know what they're called. Yeah. Are we putting those in people's backyards? And if we are we talking to the people before we put this thing in?
I don't know if there's a story there, but no, we will not be putting them in backyard.
I
Not
forgot he wasn't
literally in their
here.
backyard, but alongside their
Along, yeah.
backyards.
Corey
And
didn't,
yes, there
Corey didn't
is.
endure that, but Isaac and I walked that open space numerous times after they had a proposed layout and said, no, 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 no. We were learning some lessons, change this direction, change this hole. So, yeah, point well taken.
Okay, next slide. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the bond scenarios. As you know, we've recommended a $12 million bond in this budget. However, council, you may choose a different amount depending on the level of service that you would like to bond for. Following this discussion, right, this slide, I have a pro and con slide also regarding this so that you can kind of look at what are the pros and cons to using cash versus a bonding scenario. So at a $7 million bond, if we did a 20-year, right now the rate's 5%, we'd pay $562,000 a month over a month. Wow. A year over the 20 years. That'd be expensive. Or at 25 years, we would pay about $500,000 a year. With that $7 million, we would just get the basic multi-purpose field. So that would be landscaping, grass, and irrigation, and that's it, not any other improvements. And then also some limited sidewalks. And Corey's exact words were very, very basic. With $8 million, you can see the payments per month. We could add the top, the 7 million, sorry, per year. I can't go there. And a small parking lot. At 9 million, we would add all of those things plus another parking lot and a few smaller amenities like tables, benches, and trails, or probably a mother's request would be the restroom. I can't imagine having soccer fields without a restroom, quite honestly. Like, we're going to have some issues. But
There are restrooms at that park, acting like there's no restrooms.
are there restrooms at that park? Oh, okay. Never mind. I don't know. I haven't been there. So I just know when my kids play soccer, they're always at the restroom. My grandkids, not my kids.
You're not picking dandelions?
No, well, they are doing that and blowing them. Yeah. The $10 million, you can see the payments, and then we would be able to do all of the above, plus add a playground and a restroom if it had not been chosen with the $9 million. And then you can see the $12 million, we would do all of the above as well as complete Ronwood Park. The Wheels Park, sorry, I mistyped that.
So for me, I think when you're going to bond for facilities that are going to be used long-term, I think you should go longer. So I would want 25 years or longer. But I don't see anything for Big Ben on here. And
Don't see anything for what?
Big
Bend.
Bend. And I don't really see anything in this budget pretty
Well, the
much
big
there.
clock in
And
London.
it's like, is that ever going to be a priority and get done? What are we doing with that? Because in order to get money, we have to put in money, right? Most people aren't going to say, here's $1 million for your project. We love you. And they have in the past, but they're going to say, just like you said, they want you to put in some money. They want you to have some skin in the game. And I don't see in this budget book that we're doing much of anything.
Yeah,
And
the federal grant that we're receiving doesn't require any type of matching grant. And so really, we, as of this point, we've kind of broken into two projects. The first, rerouting the river, which is the important project getting for erosion control, for floodplains. We've now extended our contract with River Restoration that was just signed this week to continue to start the design phase. And then we'll go out to bid for construction of rerouting the river. The other part is the park itself, which we're looking at options. As of right now, getting permanent access is the really big hurdle. We had a temporary easement with Rocky Mountain Power that's now been sold to UDOT. We've looked at other areas across the river, trying to find a way to get permanent access back there, what we want the park to look like.
Wait, so the road that we wanted east of the power plant is now UDOT's?
Yep.
Well, maybe Senator
The
Harper
easement
could
was
help
sold
us
to
with
them,
that.
yeah, they're paying so UDOT will be paying fees to Rock Mountain Power, or improvement, not fees, but improvement money to improve the site in exchange for that easement. Yep, they're building a 20-foot wall around the power plant there. They're doing a lot of that.
Oh,
Yeah, no, we told them, the
interesting.
mayor was in the
Okay.
meeting when, yeah, we informed.
Can still be news to Corbin.
Yeah.
Okay, I that's a lot of money, and I'd be interested, Denise, to know in this budget what the average household is looking at increases. You know, you said what it was for the tax increase, but we've added all these other increases, and this will be an increase, and
What is the revenue source for this?
So what exactly? The intention of this would be that we could do a generational cost sharing, right? So the users of the infrastructure are paying for it each year. The majority of the payment will be made from park impact fees, so development and new growth. All of these are eligible for park impact fees. However, we don't quite collect enough to make that $12 million payment. We collect somewhere around $500,000 to $650,000 a year. So the rest of it would come from CIP reserves on an annual basis. So it shouldn't affect the general fund unless there were a place where we had dipped into our reserves in the CIP, such as that we couldn't make the additional payment from CIP. So my recommendation would be that the entire bond payment come from the CIP budget and not be part of your ongoing operational budget.
You said you had a slide.
Let's go to the next slide for just a minute. So let's talk about these for just a second, right? There's pros and cons. The first pro allows CIP funds to be used on roads and other projects, right? This is a $7 to $12 million investment. And it's probably the reason Brian has stayed for this entire discussion was because I prepped him for this. He has a big road problem. We have a big road maintenance problem. We have a large problem ahead of us, and we have decent CIP fund reserves. We need to start investing those a little bit at a time into a road maintenance project or program, not project, program. If we use them for this need, which we have a definite need, where, you know, we know that soccer field or multi-purpose fields are a high demand and an amenity that our residents have come to expect. And so investing in that is prudent and wise and good. That's not that it's not good money. It's just how do you pay for them versus a road maintenance project. You could bond for road maintenance or you can bond for the parks, one or the other. But it feels easier to bond for a park project where you know that generational cost savings is going on as it goes. There's not a lot of degradation to a multi-purpose field versus a road, which will need to be maintained during and after that 20-year period, right? So it's allowing those CIP funds to maybe be invested in roads or other capital projects that you may have on your list, including Big Bend, right? It could be whatever you decide that should be invested in. It would reduce the cost by eliminating project phasing. So you're not having to phase like we've done with Ronwood Park, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I don't know what phase we're on right now. But every time you phase, you mobilize. So you have mobilization costs, you have bidding costs, and you have inflation costs for over time. So this would allow the project to go underway, you keep those costs down, and you just finish them, right? The inflationary cost factor for construction is well greater than the 5% interest rate at this point in time. Not saying that will continue for the life of the bond, but at this point in time, it's definitely accelerated past 5%. The impact fees are estimated to cover between 60% and 100% of the annual debt service, depending on development. We did adopt a new park impact fee that did include the acceleration of these projects. So we're hopeful that we could cover 100% of the debt service, but I can't commit to that until I see development occur. And then again, the generational cost savings that we talked about, those parks are going to be used over those 25 years by the people that are paying for them. The cons are the interest cost. I mean, clearly you're paying quite a lot of interest on, $7 to $12 million. It's a lot of interest at 5% interest rate. There's another debt commitment. We've been really diligent about getting out of debt and staying with a pay-as-you-go. We haven't issued any debt since I've been here, outside of the water fund where we consolidated that debt. But this would be a sales tax revenue bond. So it would take up some of our sales tax revenue capacity. Okay. So it would reduce our bonding capacity. And then the last con that I have is that park impact fee collection might not make up the entire debt service payment, and we would have to use reserves from the CIP fund to make that up.
Question, could you talk in a little more detail about the cost of the interest versus the cost of savings that we would receive in like inflationary costs? So we're going to have on one hand inflationary costs with phases over time versus cost of interest, and how do they even out, or how comparable are those different costs?
Sure. So the consumer price index for construction materials alone is well over 15% year over year inflation. So in the last 5 years alone, we've seen almost 50% increase. We can look at it with just our water tanks, right? A water tank used to cost $5 million. Now it's 10 million or $11 million. So, and that's in a really short period of time. And so should you phase that project, you say, all right, we're going to just invest $1 million here and then $1 million there and $1 million there. That $1 million is not going to go as far. So your 5% interest rate, quite honestly, is a better deal for you than the inflationary cost index for construction, as it has been historically. I cannot predict the future.
But aren't we paying interest like annually 5%? So after 3 years, we've made up that 15%.
But you're also paying principal down at the same time. So it doesn't keep up with each other. I could do a side by side for you if you'd like, and that would be really a visual of here would be what it would cost if we were to phase this over that same 20 years. And then this would be what the interest cost would be on that bond.
But you're confident that bonding a larger bond now to complete the park would save the city money in the future? Okay.
Can I talk about how we got to this point where we're proposing a bond for Ronwood Park? As you know, with the soccer fields at the complex going away, we've been really focusing and pushing Corey hard on getting these multi-purpose fields done. That was his top priority with capital projects for this next year. He did some, he has Soma's working on the master plan and the engineering for those fields now. We're moving forward, and in that process, pretty late in our budget process, which is why we haven't kind of prepped you with this discussion in advance, is we got cost estimates for the multi-purpose fields and our jaws dropped. I thought we were going to be 3 to 4 million for these multi-purpose fields, and it was like 8 million, 8.5 million. And we were going to use our existing park impact fee money to do the 3 to 4 million and be great, because these are all park impact fee eligible projects. Well, 8.5 million plus, as you saw on the previous slide, will require us to make a major withdrawal from our capital improvement project budget. The CIP funds are really fungible. They can be spent on roads. They can be spent on park projects that aren't impact fee eligible. They can be spent on city building. CIP money can be spent on whatever you want. It's your money. It's just one-time money, but it's totally fungible. We really didn't want to spend flexible money on a project that was eligible for inflexible money. If we bond for it, we can use the impact fee money to pay back this bond as much as possible. And park impact fee money is not flexible. It can only be spent on park impacts that are related to growth. And so as we talked about that, I thought we should propose. We don't like bonding very often, but in this sense, we felt like it made sense because it lets us keep our CIP money as flexible as possible, minimize the use of the CIP money on park impact fee eligible projects and focus over time our park impact fee revenues on paying back this bond.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions. How many, on that piece of property that we're talking $7+ million, how many fields are we talking putting in there?
Depends on the size, but we had it around 8 to 9 with a few small fields, one or two large fields. then
So
intermediate.
but how many do we need to replace?
It's closer to 15, 16.
So we're not even coming close to to replacing the fields.
No, we'll have to use other parks as well.
It's a lot closer than zero.
This bond would
Well,
be
it-
eligible for multipurpose fields in other parks as well that did not already have a multipurpose field.
I'm
Yeah.
just,
We just won't be able to host as many games as we used to.
well, I'm just concerned.
And if you went out there, all those fields weren't being used anyway. So I mean, you say there's 16 fields out by the airport? But I go out there and they're not all being used. It's maybe 10.
No,
Yeah, and it's not like the good old days where we had the tournaments that would clog the
Right.
streets and.
I got
know,
that. But if we're
haven't
talking
had that
about
since the pandemic.
here's where I'm wondering if we're going down the right road. Oh, sorry, that's your projects, not his.
Roads, where we're going, we don't need
No.
roads.
If we're talking multi-use fields and they get used a lot, maintenance is going to be a lot higher. Because the fields, we can only use the soccer fields for soccer. Can't use them for football, we can't use them for lacrosse, we can't use them for anything that throws an object, right? And so are those fields gonna be used more? And are they gonna get tore up more? So the question I'm asking is, one, should we be looking at some artificial turf fields? Two, if we're only replacing 6 or 8 fields, I guess the question is, and this is where I'm frustrated. We have known for, and Corbin, you're not gonna like me, but we've known for 2 or 3 years, soccer fields are going away. 10 years. But we knew a couple of years ago that, the soccer field lease was gonna cost us money. And we saw some stuff at the retreat that was dated last July. And like you told me there was still a glimmer of hope. And so we were working on some things. We're now in June, passing a budget for July. If we approve the bond, we're not gonna start construction this summer on that park. They end a year from now, right? October of 2025 or something like that. We're not gonna have the parks built to replace what we need to replace. First, that frustrates me. But what we haven't seen yet is, what do we need to replace? How many fields do we really need to cover the multi-use of the city? We're gonna have 3 or 4 or 5, whatever's left over by Public Works that's on city property. We're gonna have those few. Are adding the fields at Ronwood plus the ones that we have enough, or what's the inventory of the other land? The detention pond at New Bingham. That's New Bingham there, right? Yeah, the detention pond at New Bingham at Echo Ridge. Is that big enough for any fields? Is the detention pond that Greg's designing now at U-111, is that gonna be big enough for some fields? we don't have an inventory, and so I just feel like I'm committing, I feel like what's being asked of me is to commit to the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, and I don't know and I'm playing bowling with a curtain in front of me, and I'm throwing a ball, and I don't know if I'm in the gutter, or I'm going down the lane. I have no idea whether I'm hitting the target or not.
Or you could just look at it and say, this is what we need to do to start and let's go from there.
Well, yeah, but.
I mean, getting frustrated is not going to change it. Let's just
No,
move
but-
forward.
Right, but yeah, and we can start, but my question is, are we going down the right path? If we can start down I-15 doing 110 miles an hour, but if we're supposed to go out I-80, doesn't do us any good. So that's my question. Are we going down the right path? Are we building? First off, I'm gonna ask the question for soccer fields or multi-use fields. Are we even in the right location at Ronwood Park? The 28 acres that the city owns over by the railroad tracks at 78, is it a better place for multi-use? And would it be better to put the money there than it would to be at Ronwood? And so those are the questions that I'm wondering, or are we just throwing darts in the air and hoping it just hits and we're making?
I don't see darts. I see some solutions that have been given to us to look at. And yes, you're right. We have the stuff by the tracks. Can we put 8 fields by the tracks? No. Maybe you can
No,
put 4.
I'm talking about the railroad tracks at 78th west of
That's
the
what I'm saying.
airport.
Yeah.
There's 28 acres.
Yes,
there.
I know. 4 years ago, they told me about it. Brian told me about it when he was the parks director, that that's an area where we've looked at. So yes, 6 years ago, they looked at that area for fields.
I was gonna say those, I've been told that those were proposed in the past, but they were chosen, that was not funded.
Do they need to be all together?
That's what I said. I can answer some of these questions. We can get every field we're losing the soccer complex, we can make up for. Dave Naylor has put together a huge packet of every park, every piece of green space. He's drawn what size and dimensions of fields we get, soccer fields we can get at every one of those parks. So the question's gonna be, from what I hear, is do we want to replace soccer complex with just one location? Because that probably isn't possible, but we can replace it with using existing infrastructure, the Ronwood fields. We can replace all of the fields that we lose by utilizing all of those parks and by Ronwood. Going to your extra maintenance, how we, with our facility use policy, we wouldn't overprogram the fields. If the soccer league comes in and they reserve multi-purpose fields at Ronwood, spring and fall, it's gonna be soccer only. There won't be any extra football, so the maintenance really won't increase.
So
Is-
if, to what you just said, if soccer programs it for spring and fall, then we can't use a multi-purpose field for Little League football that plays in the fall. We
You're
can't use it for lacrosse, so it's not a multi-purpose field. It becomes a soccer field, whoever programs it first.
Yes.
And see,
So
I'm
Calvin,
not sure I like that.
you're right. I don't like that either. We want to get as much use out of every field as we possibly can, balancing the maintenance needs to keep the turf healthy with all the desired uses from the community, right? We get requests for ultimate frisbee, rugby, cricket, football, flag football, soccer. I can go on, lacrosse. I love that. We want as much multi-purpose use as we can, but we do have to balance it against maintaining the fields to adequate usable levels. I can talk to you, we don't know, we haven't done a study as to how many fields we need for every one of these leagues in our city. I can tell you the want list is huge. I've met with a few of the leagues, Corey's met with a few of the leagues. They all want lots of fields and they all want them to have first priority of the fields, right?
And they all want the
We-
city to build them.
We have not done an analysis of all the wish lists of all the different leagues for all the different uses. I can tell you the marginal cost to build fields is less expensive at Ronwood Park than any other site we've evaluated. Dave Naylor has looked at other sites. You mentioned the Trax property, which we still have. which I think we probably will someday end up building there. But the cost to build the next 8 or 9 fields is cheaper at Ronwood Park than at anywhere else. Because there's already existing park infrastructure at Ronwood Park. And so we're adding on to that existing park infrastructure. To go anywhere else, we're either doing it on a small scale, like 1 field at a time, which is more expensive on a cost dollar
Mobilization.
basis, or like the track site, we've got to build the whole site. So we've got to put some connector lanes through. We've got to develop the whole site
Parking and
from raw
everything.
ground. Lastly, as you know, the Ronwood site is where we hope to get the county to partner with us on a county rec center. I view this bond as a really, really big show of support and commitment by the city of West Jordan, that we're serious about the site at Ronwood and that it's an overall recreation site for the whole west end of our city and the whole west end of the valley, and that we want to use our commitment to this site as a further lever to push with the county and partnering for us with that rec center.
I think, and Isaac, you can, or Isaac, Corey, used to be Isaac. Correct, yeah, right, and beards, and the whole thing. Plaid shirts, the whole, never mind. The whole, or the idea of parks programming and leagues and tournaments and things, it's tempting to look at it like a solid, like we have this much volume of use that we need to then, we're losing this container for it, so we need to build containers to hold this volume of use. And it's tempting to look at it that way, but I really think it's more like a gas. Parks programming is going to fill the container you give it, right? If we only build 8 soccer fields, we're not going to have them double booked for 16 tournaments that we would have had on 16 fields. We're going to have 8 tournaments or, whatever it is. It's going to fill the container that you give it. So it's just building these 8 fields or 6 fields or whatever we end up building at Ronwood, whatever that park develops into. And I had some fun at the open house playing with the little tiles and things. Is whatever we put there an improvement over where we're going to be if we don't do that, right? And there's a lot that goes into that equation, right? There's the cost, there's the mobilization, there's the appeal to the county for the recs. There's all these components to that equation, but to me, it's not how do we replace the soccer complex? It's, well, what are we going to do now?
Well, and I don't disagree with you. But what I heard was, and this is the difficulty, is that we're building multi-use fields, but whoever gets there first gets to use it, and it's not going to be a true multi-use field because of the increased cost of maintenance tearing up the grass. And so what we're doing is if we build the multi-use field and somehow the soccer gets in line, we spent $12 million to replace soccer fields. We haven't increased the capacity or done anything to help Little League football. We haven't done anything for lacrosse. We haven't done anything for anything else. You see where I'm going with that? That's my concern, is that these multi-use fields are only going to replace the soccer fields, and the only people that are going to use them are the soccer people.
And I know, I think Councilmember Bloom is trying to get in, so I'll be fast, but Corey can address this. Their team is already trying to come up with a matrix to prioritize the different groups exactly
One
for
of
the
the
reasons you're
things
talking
I've
about.
noticed as I've been here, I've been in a few other places with rec departments. It's kind of hard. It's been hard for me coming in early to gauge how much recreation needs there are. Our facility use policy, I think, restricted us for a while. We didn't allow adult leagues. We didn't allow a lot of things. So now that those are the uses Paul's referring to, we're looking at how can we open it up for adult leagues, for other leagues. I've had adult softball organizations come to me in the last 2 months. They want to run softball fields. We don't have any girls softball programs. So to your point, there is a lot. I don't think we fully know the recreation needs of the city because We've just kind of had fields and here's what's available, whoever can come get them. But if we build a lot, say we could build 3 complexes like the soccer complex and we could probably April to November. I really believe so.
Only if you replace a cornfield with it. I mean,
But
it depends on where you put it.
this would be step 1 to getting there.
Pamela needs to.
Sorry.
chime in.
No, I was
Sorry.
trying to jump in. No, I'm glad you said something because I've been on several leagues, some softball, some kickball, and I didn't realize that we didn't allow adult leagues, which I think has done us a serious disservice for the long term because, having West Jordan drive out to, 30, 40 minutes to another field, our goal in this city is to bring people into West Jordan. And a big part of that is fields. And I get it. If we have a field that soccer starts off with and it's a priority, that hurts us. But we do need to make building these fields and figuring it out a priority because that's part of, creating the culture in our city.
Yeah,
And now it's quiet.
I agree.
What we're proposing, we feel like is a baby step. Because we haven't done all this analysis, right? We're not proposing a $20 million bond to do both the tracks property and Ronwood Park. We do need further analysis, but I feel like this property, this park and a bond to hurry and do this park area keeps our money as flexible as possible. We think it's going to be a really good investment of time value of money compared to construction inflation costs. And we think it will, we know whatever we build at Ronwood Park will get lots of programming, lots of use.
Nobody really responded to Councilmember Green's question about turf, artificial turf. Could you speak to that, please?
I love it. A lot of cities are now doing artificial turf. They call them championship fields, where you can do more than one event on it. They are pricier to install, but I think it's a great idea. You see it, Salt Lake City just, I think, put 3. Oh, sorry. My wife always tells me I'm a loud speaker, so I try to stay away, but. No, yeah, that's one of the big pushes. Provo's installing a bunch of those championship fields right now, and they've got contracts, to reserve them out.
Corey, what's the relative cost of a championship field versus a turf
I haven't
field?
looked recently, but we did one at Utah Valley University. It was just over $1 million for one artificial turf field. Normal field about 500,000, so it's about double.
What
And now
about,
it's been a few years, so I haven't looked.
what about over
recently, but I
time?
can look.
What, is there a cost savings over time?
You
I
don't
can
have
get
to,
Water
those.
and maintenance?
you
They're-
don't have to water them.
Water's the big cost savings. There still is maintenance. There's still a lot of
But we need to
maintenance.
spend 20,000.
You don't mow, but you actually vacuum. You have to vacuum on. There's still maintenance that goes into it. Like say we maintained one at Utah Valley University. And, yep.
Is it also,
They rip, they still get burn marks.
Get a
they rip,
Roomba.
what about,
And for little kids,
do you
they're
get
hot.
longer,
So for
Outside there.
more
children
use
playing
over time,
soccer.
like over into the winter months, can you get
Oh, yeah, yep.
more use
Yep. As long as they're not
throughout the
Wet and
year?
cold and slippery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I thought was a good question, and
Can we look
But I
at the
can get
way that we're
costs.
putting this together? If it's, Ron Wood is only able to get so many fields and you say you're looking at other places, can we set up a thing where maybe Ron Wood is, that's soccer and these other places are set for definitely more multi-purpose? If soccer is going to be where most of it's going, can we, plan out something so that we know that these others are going to be much more multi-purpose, multi-use? If we know that soccer is going to take up at least 8 fields, why don't we just not make them multi-purpose and make them what we know is going to fill them all the time? But then in the other places we're looking at building, that's where we can maybe look at, these are going to be definitely more multi-purpose in how we're designing them.
Yeah, we can do that. From my experience, I prefer multi-purpose just with changing demographics. Soccer's big and then it dies down football used to be big and then with
Yep.
concussions, it's died down. And so I've always preferred multi-purpose, but we can look at those as options. Yeah, we can design it in any way.
Well, multi-purpose to me means one big piece of grass that you can stripe off because it's big enough to turn into multi-fields, right?
Yeah, you won't have permanent soccer goals.
It's not
whether they're
permanent
on-
soccer goals. It's not
Mhm.
permanent It's not permanent rugby goals. It's, you know, not permanent lacrosse goals.
Football field goal things. Can we get
And
those?
Little League doesn't use football field goalposts, so that,
That's why, that's why kickers suck.
that's, and they don't
They don't
kick.
start until they're in high school.
That's right. They don't kick because there's no goalposts. But you know, I think Bob, Councilmember Bador may be onto something, is that if we're looking at Ron Wood Park you know, there's fields, you know, there's the, like I said, there's that detention pond at New Bingham Highway. Constitution Park, has got some grass. Um, are there other parks that we can, with a little bit of work, turn those into multi-purpose fields so that something like Ute Conference football, you know, West Jordan can use it one weekend and Copper Hills the next, and do the home and away stuff that they always do, and those kind of things, and not play on half of the softball field at Constitution Park that they don't like, and those kind of things. What I'm suggesting is, yes, there's the multi-use fields at Ron Wood, but we also need to know what the inventory is in the city to say, hey, you know, there's enough space for 2 football fields or 2 multi-purpose fields that could be used for football or whatever they need. You know where I'm going with that?
Absolutely. So we've done a lot of, informal study. I won't say formal study on this issue. What you're describing is a little bit of a change in philosophy in the way we deliver park services as a city. Heretofore, our philosophy has been, a couple of large regional parks and then small neighborhood parks. And our small neighborhood parks don't typically have restroom facilities and large parking facilities. And they aren't necessarily sized for fields, for recreation fields. Some of them kind of can work. There's some challenges with some of them, you know, it looks like it'll work, but the layout doesn't quite fit. But almost all of those smaller neighborhood parks don't have the restroom facilities or parking facilities for regular recurring games and even practices that are challenging. So we have, I mentioned kind of looking at it informally, to convert our existing parks to recreation facility parks. Often what we're doing is adding a parking lot and a restroom and then changing where some of the trees are, maybe changing some slopes. That becomes very expensive on a per field basis, but we're not acquiring land. So it is the ongoing evaluation, but though that's a kind of middle ground that right now we don't really have in our park inventory, is medium-sized recreation field oriented parks. Is that fair to say?
Okay, council, where do we want to go with this?
I'm in favor of going for the whole enchilada. It's just, it's I'd rather do it all at once. I felt that way about Maple Hills when we did that. We did it all at once. It's just a better.
Say cut it to 10 and not have a playground. Whenever I took my kids out to the soccer park, we never went to the playground.
But the
Hey,
difference
I can't hear
between,
you, Chad.
difference between 10 million and 12 million is
2
finishing
million.
off the wheels park, I think, right?
Yeah, that was the 10.
What can we do? 10 million and no playground and finish out the Wheels Park?
Probably not. Wheels Park's expensive because it's concrete.
I'm in favor of whatever's gonna save the city more money in the long run. If we're forward thinking, which one is that gonna be? Is it the 12?
I think it really depends on the level of amenity that you're trying to add to the city, right? Are you wanting the multipurpose fields with 2 parking lots, a restroom and a playground?
Here's my feel is we bond for the 12, we try to spend 10, but you know it's gonna be 12.
Yeah,
Whoa,
that's true. That's what she said.
Bond for 12, shoot for 9
and spend 15, yeah.
yeah.
Well, the best part about this bond, quite honestly, is that if we were to have additional funds because there were savings somewhere, right? Contractors are dying for work. We've gone through that before. Then that money could be invested in any other park because there's no restriction on it. It's a sales tax revenue bond for park upgrades, right? We would bond for park upgrades and we would give them an outline, our credit agency and the bondholders. These are the things that we believe we can accomplish, but we would make that list far in excess of what we thought we could really accomplish with $12 million because I can't have money left over, right? So we would need to invest it in pickleball courts at Veterans Park or, whatever else whatever you decide.
Or if you
Um,
want 20, there's 29 acres. It's not great access, but there is 29 acres that we could
Bridle-
program a lot of,
I
lot
looked
of
at the
sports.
map. There's only five houses that front that on Bridle Creek. Everything else is backyards. And they sit right across the street from what would be the future park. I can't imagine that those five people would be mad to lose that whole dirt and dusty, windy, weedy area for a park across the street. So
So I think there's a lot we could do with this money, moving forward. And like Corbett said, the biggest argument is that we can use park impact fees to pay it back over time. If we invest in this with cash, that same option is not available.
Why did you choose 20 and 25? Why didn't you choose 25 and 30?
It's really hard to bond for a park for 30 years. I can sometimes get a water tank for 30 years, but that's about my only infrastructure you can
because
really
they
get
say
at a
the
30
life
year.
of the asset is 25 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
The amortization periods for those kind of public utility things
Makes
are
it a lot
25
harder to
years.
sell.
I'm just if the park impact fee can't cover the payment, then it comes out of the CIP.
And then we have no
Currently.
asphalt, we have no.
It would be at a lot, I'm pretty confident we could easily get $500,000 to $600,000 a year for the next 20 years, easily on the development that we have out there right now.
But that means that we're coming up with $250,000, $300,000
Per
every
year.
year.
Yes,
Do we have that capability without increasing taxes?
yes.
Oh, yeah.
I would even be in favor of a $2 a year parks impact utility fee. Something we've talked about, but we haven't ever
A couple weeks ago, we
approached.
if we don't want to stay in, the business of providing soccer fields, that's a different conversation. But if we're saying, hey, we view providing soccer fields as one of our municipal services we really intend to provide, I feel like this is the best way financially to try to provide that as the soccer complex goes offline and still preserve tax dollars, CIP dollars, flexibility for the road issues we talked about 2 weeks
And
ago.
don't forget, we're gonna
Because
save,
those road issues are gonna be a big, long-term,
we're gonna save how many
liability.
$100,000 a year on water at the soccer complex, by the way.
What was it? I'm sorry.
How many $100,000 a year are we paying to water the
Oh.
soccer complex? I mean, we're gonna have to pay to
But
water
we'll
this
water
too, but
run
for the
with.
first year or two, we're not, as we build, we're not watering.
What, Corey, you keep saying multi-purpose fields, but we keep saying soccer. Reality, it seems like it'll probably be soccer fields. So what's the price difference between building them as multi-purpose fields versus soccer fields?
Not very much, just really the cost of soccer goals, permanent soccer goals in there, and that's about it. It's
So
really
for-
not, it's not adding much cost at all.
For me, it's kind of like watching the transition between tennis courts that used to be built all over and pickleball courts.
Size of the net.
Okay, so we're gonna move forward with the budget like this, but we will have bond counsel come to you. We will have our financial advisors talk with you. This is just the start of a process. This is only like a step one.
But this is in the proposed budget. Do you want, can I get a thumbs up vote or a more formal recognition? Do you want to keep this in the proposed budget at the $12 million amount?
Pamela, do you have a thumb?
Yes, my thumb is up.
I'm not,
Okay.
I'm non-committal right now.
And that's okay. I mean, you can have some time. We've got a couple of weeks before you have to adopt a tentative. But then we'll need to adopt a tentative budget. And that tentative budget is gonna have quite a few changes in it from what the mayor's proposed budget is, because you have several things that you want to talk about as well as anything else that you want to change. So, all right, let's go to the next slide and actually skip one more. All right, these are the Parks Capital Projects maintenance plan. I think it was a year ago, 2 years ago, we really realized that we did not commit much to maintenance similar to roads, to parks maintenance, and we were really falling, I guess, below what service level we would like. And so we've been investing in this. So we have these projects that are ongoing maintenance. So it's taking care of the things we already have or replacing things that have been worn out. $1.3 million. Next slide. And then these are the construction projects. So that 12 million is that multi-purpose fields. Finishing off well, not finishing it off. Investing the next phase of the Wheels Park, adding a columbarium to the cemetery, which is where you place urns with so it's above ground burying,
I thought that was
not
like a
below.
customer service rep, like you call and bury them.
Oh, that's
It's a-
kind of good.
Denise, it's an urn niche. That's what they're
An
called.
urn niche. Thank you. It's an
Uh,
urn niche.
Denise, can,
Call and bury them. I don't think they're buried though. They're all above ground.
Denise and council, can I just add one item? In the survey that's out to the residents, we did ask if the city wants to continue being in the cemetery service and what their interest level in that. So we should have results of that prior to adopting the budget in August.
However, this would just
Alan, did
expand our
that-
capacity
did
at our
that
current place.
question ask, like, are they willing to invest in that, or did it just say, do you want a cemetery? Because how that question is written,
It was more along the lines of if residents would continue to support the city once the current cemetery had reached capacity, if they would continue to support cemetery services provided by the city once it had reached capacity.
and I don't
Future
think-
locations, that is to say.
I'm not sure that's going to ascertain the data that we were looking for.
We just close the cemetery once it's full?
Yep.
Just say, sorry, nobody can come here anymore?
Well, if there's no room, we can't.
It can go in the columbarium.
People still want to visit.
Oh,
It's not like we
the
can just-
cemetery will always be there. It's a matter of, do we want to buy more land to have?
It's like the one on
More
90th. You can't
plots
put
or
any more
not.
90th, but it's there.
Well, and it depends. Sometimes there are still plots left. There could be some plots at 90th. I think.
No, 90th done.
There's still some.
I think there are
They,
some
I've
that
been
will.
told that they can't because they don't know where people are buried there.
I've heard that same thing.
So that's why they don't open up any on 90th.
And council, we are looking at possible solutions to this, depending on what the appetite, depending on what the survey says and of course, what council's wishes are as far as future expenditures for, to this end, so.
We're not gonna solve that one tonight on. our
Not tonight,
budget
no.
discussion.
We're gonna add the Sycamores Park project we already discussed, the landscaping at 90th South, which is part of the UDOT project. So after UDOT is done, that will
I
happen.
have a question on that one.
Uh-huh.
I have a
Hey,
question on that one
This
because
is you.
the council said 500,000 for a, whatever they want, a privacy wall, whatever UDOT's calling
Sound
nowadays.
walls.
And that didn't happen. And then we said, okay, use the 500,000 for the 90th South entryway thing, but now it says 550. And somewhere else it says something else,
Under
so.
that inflationary cost index for construction.
But we did, so you're putting an extra 50,000 in there saying, are we now willing to spend 550,000 on the? Is that,
That's correct. So
Okay.
we were doing as part of one of our other projects, the city signage. I think we added 50, hoping, once we get our city signages decided, we would then install a sign out there. That was another reason for the increase.
Thank you.
Corey, just real quick, this is separate money from the 500,000 that we're using for the walls. I had that 500,000.
Yeah, I'd never heard about the money for the walls. I just knew the betterment agreement.
I have 500,000 that I'm using
Okay.
right now on the wall project that they're working on now, painting the walls and thin coating them and doing all that to preserve them. Your money, this money, from what I understand, is separate from that 500,000.
Yes, this is just landscaping, irrigation, putting a sign if what's
But-
needed there as the entryway.
But to Councilmember Whitelock's point, I proposed, like we talked, I proposed using that 500,000 for walls and to landscape that berm as you come into the city. But as we talked, there was different funding available to do that. So now I can use that 500,000 to get the walls looking decent, I guess, and then maybe put more money towards the 90th South walls further to the west and take care of the pink wall and get that a different.
I love
know,
that pink
I
wall. I
know.
had somebody at the Bees game. I just happened to be sitting behind somebody who was from West Jordan. They turn around and go, "Are you the guy on the?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you know, whatever." You know, what are you gonna do about that pink wall?
Oh,
I
that
was
pink
like,
wall.
So
"Oh my gosh!" At a Bees game, that was cool.
anyway, this is two separate amounts of money.
So which project is paying today to upgrade the side of that berm by Viscarelli's property?
That would be that would be this 550.
Okay.
And Councilmember Whitelock, this is where we'll see a Big Bend project. So you'll see $730,000 of Big Bend projects from grant awards, not investments from the city. Right, we're not,
We're not. Seems we don't have.
right.
Since you hit Big Ben, what are we doing for the access to Big Bend? Are we trying to come in from the north side down by asphalt materials? Is UDOT gonna let us use the easement? What are we gonna do? Cause it's great that we're spending we're $750,000 to finish, to do some stuff at Big Bend. And it'll be great when we have an urban fishing pond, but nobody gonna use it if there's no access.
Yep, and we can't, get with the Fish and Game. They won't stock the pond unless we have a program and access in place. So we won't even be able to stock the pond. We've looked to the north with Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District, for permanent access. There isn't, we've had talks with them about temporary maintenance access down the road that they'd be willing to listen to. We've put in calls with North Jordan Canal that are not returning calls. We've reached out to fur breeders across to the east of the river to see if that's an option. We'd have to build a large expensive bridge over there under litigation.
We have some land over there.
Yeah, but where
A
we're
little bit.
rerouting the river, they're actually leaving the old river, so we would have to cross two.
Oh,
Which would be very expensive to have to cross two rivers. So I showed Corbin one area, just last week, David Clements and I found that it's property that's owned by the city. I haven't even shown the mayor or anybody yet, so we're looking at any option.
Is that on the north end of
It's
the,
on the, west side next to the trailhead there. So cause really, access I think should have been.
cause we own
solved
we own a
years
ton
ago.
of, we own a ton of property down on the north end, down towards 78th. We own 10 acres down there, right? And on the station area plan, that was a regional park, or we can't use some of that to tie into the Big Bend easement?
So it's a little bit of it's a catch-22, right? Big Bend is not my favorite project because we said we're going to do it and we'll figure it out as we go. And so it's been very, very challenging to figure out access, property acquisition, grants, and so on as we go. And oh, by the way, let's not spend any city money on it. Let's fund it entirely with grants. Before Corey, Isaac, Chuck, they all did a really good job trying to leverage as much grants as possible, but this access issue has been very, very challenging. In some ways, access is a little bit of a, I don't know, I want to say it's a full-on blessing, but it is not as bad as it seems because the whole intent of the Big Bend area was to be a nature preserve. And so in some ways, bringing cars and a parking lot right into the heart of it undermines that effort. We think we have a plan that will allow for vehicles in for maintenance of the site, but public access is very difficult without it being a little bit of a walk, whether it's from the northwest, from the far north, or from the south. There's not a great solution, and we've looked at it upside down and backwards for 2 years now, trying to work out a better access than
What kind of
than
walk
what
are
we
you
have.
talking about?
Quarter, maybe what would you say from that northwest trailhead, a quarter mile?
Quarter mile at the most, yeah, from Northwest Trail.
So
Where's the northwest?
you know, some
tra-
people grew up
It's,
going hiking in a mile to a fishing pond, right? It's not,
Where's
you're not gonna be
the
able to drive right
northwest-
up to a fishing pond and park. If you want to do that, go to the Sandy or South Jordan Fishing
Where's the
Pond.
northwest
but-
trailhead?
it's on,
It's across the
8600
canal.
south.
It's west of it's by the Betty Naylor's farm, up on top of the hill.
Oh, okay.
It's steep. I mean, it's like, what's the famous street in San Francisco that, I mean, it's Lombard Street. Yeah, I mean, it's steep and windy, yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is the general capital projects fund. So this holds all of our reserves. So anything you saw as reserves in the previous ones are all impact fees. This is holding anything that is our general reserve. So this is our, as Corbin uses, the fungible money, right? This is money that we can do, you can do what you want with. The $2.2 million we're getting next year is the TRCC grant for the Art Center. Other revenue, 420,000 is the interest income from the loan that this fund made to the Water and Sewer Fund for their ARPA projects. And then the budgeted transfer from the general fund of $90,000, which is probably gone now because we have spent more than that in other things. So we'll see where that goes. Our expenditures are about $12 million. So our reserves, after all the projects I'm going to show you on the next slide, are still $23.7 million. Brian would like those earmarked as Brian's funds. Yeah, that's a song. Next slide, please. How we are going to be spending our CIP funds for the next fiscal year are some maintenance projects, which is about $683,000. So those would be considered facility maintenance projects. And then building the community arts center, we are not asking for a budget increase. We are going to work within the budget that the council has approved. Portion of it is spent in 2024, and anything that's unspent will carry forward. I'm estimating that will be about $7 million. It may or may not be, depending on how that construction moves forward by
Some
June
of that's
30th.
probably gonna carry forward into the following year too, right?
It may, I don't know. They're supposed to be finished. Yeah, they're supposed to be finished before the
Is
fiscal
Home
year.
Depot building it?
Yeah, the entire
Said
thing.
April Fool's Day was the day they projected.
It's supposed to be
I
next.
am so not gonna touch that.
That was the day projected.
It is. The City Hall remodel, again, this is just a carry forward of, it's not asking for additional funds. It's a carry forward of unspent funds to date, and that would be a lot of construction retention or things that are on order that haven't come in yet, that kind of thing. The public art program, this is a carry forward. So council, if you would like to add to this program, this would be the time to talk to that. This would be carrying forward the 25,000 that was originally budgeted but has not been carried forward yet.
Up and spent.
And then the senior center roof project.
So, silly question, since you mentioned the public art program. What do we need to do? What does the council need to do?
It's
to-
gonna cost more than $25,000. Or else you're just gonna get a little metal statue that's like this big.
So,
Mr. Lee's trying to get some spare parts from a community member to create an art project. So
you
he
mean like
has,
those ones at the lake at
he
Daybreak?
has thought about it because he did bring it up on a recent tour.
Rusty gears and stuff like that you weld together?
So there is this has been a vexing line item a little bit because $25,000 is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money to have big impact out in the community, like a sculpture in a roundabout or the gold medal, the Gold Star Monument Memorial, or something to that scale. So we haven't spent it yet. I don't want to spend money that we don't have a good plan with. And to be honest, art, I don't want to be the decider of whether art is art, what we want or don't want, right? I wrestle arms with the facility guys and with Brian every time someone's got to pick a color.
I remember the discussion we had over the countertop color for that desk.
It's
Somehow
right.
we made a pink
So to
wall.
make it, so to say this is the art we want in our community or not, I'm very concerned about a process by which the community selects the art, right? Not a single individual, but a board, a committee, a group of stakeholders. And so if you'll carry this forward, we'll form such a group and give them, say, you got a $25,000 budget, come up with some proposals and then choose amongst those proposals. If you want to fund more, obviously the more you fund, the more
More you can do
broader,
with
the
it, yeah.
broader impact you can have. Yeah, but
So,
I love this line item, but I don't dare touch it until we have a good process by which to spend it.
and I appreciate it, and I'm glad it hasn't been reallocated somewhere else with that in mind. I'll tell you, when I proposed this a year ago, what I thought would happen with this. What I saw this going a couple ways, but what I thought would happen with this is this would be the first in an ongoing thing. I figured this was an ongoing expense, right? And the first one, we're probably not gonna get something, a program designed, built, and something completed for that price tag. But I figured we might be able to start down the road of putting that committee together, putting out I don't want to call it an RFP because it's less formal than that. I want it to be, open it up to the community, put some social media out there. We want to spend money on arts in the community. What you got out there, West Jordan? Put the brain trust of the community at work and have artists submit. I'll build a sculpture out of rusty gears and spare parts and make it look like a bicycle, like at Daybreak. And I'll do it for $2,000 or, submit artists. What have you got? Paint a mural on the side of the cemetery building or whatever.
We got this pink wall on 90th South.
South Jordan paints paints those utility boxes on the side of the road, Propose that. What do you got? Give me something, for the cost of paint. I know, gosh, I could probably get my girls for the cost of paint and $100 for an afternoon. They'd go paint 10 of those boxes, because they love doing the chalk art and stuff like that.
I heard that statue of
What?
responsibility is coming to Utah. We should just bring
Statue
it
of
to West Jordan
responsibility.
instead of Draper.
What I enjoy about the potential for this is, as I travel, I've noticed the cities that stand out most are the ones that have the art in the cities, the ones that have the painting on, certain streets, the ones that have art in every single roundabout. And I realize those are my favorite places to go to, and we don't have that in West Jordan. And so I love this, and I hope we can expand on it and do something wonderful. And I like the idea that this is a step forward, and we can learn from it and grow from it. So I think this is a great start.
Yeah. So, I would love to keep this, obviously keep it in the budget, but put this year's allocation for that on it too. You didn't spend it, it's still there.
Before I increase it, I'd like to see something come out of administration to say, this is what we're doing and putting a plan together with a committee.
Yeah, that's fair, right? Yep. I just said, I don't dare spend it till we have a good plan, right? But what I'm hearing is at least carry forward the 25,000 from the current year that doesn't get spent in the current year at a minimum. And if we have a good plan, we can come pitch you on, hey, we have a good plan. This committee said, 25,000 is good, but 50,000 would be great. And then you can decide.
We can budget amendment whenever we need to.
But I think Chair Jacob had a really good idea, because I think if you put it out to the public, that they know their artwork will be somewhere in the city, I think you're going to have people, that's kind of what they did at the airport for paintings, right? Artists applied.
When I worked at Sinclair Oil, I had to design a ice for ice cooler that's outside a gas station, you know? There's an ice cooler that they put their bags of ice in. And I designed a graphic for the front of it. It just said ice and I made it, you know, look like ice cubes. And I had the dyno there with like snow cap on and drip, you know, and I designed that and I thought it was so cool. I went to go see it at a gas station that I would never go to. I drove out of my way, went to go see it, and my wife took a picture of me standing next to it. And I was like, hey, I did that, you know. And it was just so cool. It was a graphic design that I made on my computer and they printed it, put it on their ice cooler. So it's a thing.
One of my favorite books is For the Love of Cities. I don't know if you've read that, if you're familiar with the work of Peter Kageyama. He talks about, he's got a series of books that talk about creating emotional connections between people and the places where they live. And what you're describing is that emotional connection between my city and why I love my city, why I love my community. And I love what you're saying about community engagement, community ownership in the art, just enhance, like someone that has their art featured in their community, they're never moving out. Right? In fact, they're invested in maintaining that site and maintaining that piece of art or that piece of property.
To that thing, I saw a study once. People, you know, they asked did a study or a poll and asked how many people would die for their country, how many people would die for their state, how many people would die for their, you know, fight for their city, fight for their neighborhood. And country was really high and it just went down from there. The more local you got, the less people cared.
Yep.
And you're right. You gotta reverse that, man. You gotta get people to care. It can't just be the people that run for office that claim we care about our city, right? I mean, it's gotta be more, so.
With Chair Jacobs' idea though, with the Sinclair, we build a big refrigerator and then people can put their art on the refrigerator. Yeah.
All we gotta do is build this concrete wall and just say, go for it.
Then it just changes it all the time. Yeah.
I've
Open
seen
it up
many
to
cities
graffiti.
even paint a lot of their intersections in their downtown, and it was very colorful and very artful, and I can't imagine that being very expensive, but it was cool, and I have pictures all over my phone of it.
On the street, you mean?
Yeah, on the street, yeah, in their
The roads?
intersections, they have them different colors and painted. It's really cool looking.
Nice.
I do have a question on this
Yes.
slide. Given where we're at with the Gold Star Memorial, is there gonna have to be any carryover for that?
In your last budget amendment of the fiscal year, there's a clause in there that allows me to carry forward any committed but unspent funds into
Okay.
the next fiscal year. So that should
Okay.
cover it.
Good.
Okay, next slide. There was several pieces of equipment that we talked about during our budget meetings with the fire department, emergency management, SWAT, police, streets, whatever. This is the list of that equipment because they're one-time purchases that will then have a recovery in future years. So cost recovery will occur in future years, but these are one-time commitments. So we have $300,000 of additional equipment here.
So, question,
Can you use the forestry attachment? I know, that's what
No.
you're asking.
no, I'm not gonna ask if I can go operate a lawnmower. You're not gonna get that from me, Brian. Or Corey. So here's my question. We had in the IT budget $500,000. That was going to be a major expense this year for the police replacements,
Oh, yeah.
computer replacement. My question is, if we take that out of one-time funds like the CIP, we would actually be able to, because if I remember right, there were about $515,000 for computers, and we needed $75,000 for ongoing expenses to build up that fund so we could replace them, right? If we shifted that 515 to one-time monies, then we only budget, then we fully fund the 75 as an ongoing expense. We're saving almost $400,000. We could eliminate most of the tax increase this year because we reduced the budget by $400,000, right?
A portion of it, yeah.
See, I would like to see the one-time monies for the IT come out of the CIP and reduce the cost, reduce that amount minus the 75K, reduce that amount so that we can adjust for, and we may not have to increase the taxes.
I spoke with the IT person who it works in the police department, and he told me that there was a miscommunication on that $500,000 figure, and that it is something that they can do over a period of years and not just all at once. Can anyone here speak to that?
We're looking at several options for the tough book replacement program. But we can't delay the replacement of that program over time. We're going to end up trying to do as much as we can to shift some of that replacement so we don't have it hit again in the same kind of way. But in talking to the IT director, it's not possible for us to like say we're going to do it over 5 years. It's just too long a period. They're already 5 years old.
So anyway, that's
But
it.
we are looking at like laptops versus tough books. We're also looking at different brands. There's another brand that's come out with a tough book that's about 60% of the cost of the Panasonic tough book. So we're looking at several options, and we're calling other people that have used other options to find out if that's possible, right? Does a tough book only go to a patrol officer that's on a bike versus in a car where they probably never take out their computers? So we're looking at lots of opportunities for cost savings in that, but we don't know what that looks like quite yet.
But you can see where I'm going with that is if we use one-time monies, then we can reduce the overall budget by that cost, but add some for replacement. And we should end up being able to save $400,000 and that's 400,000 out of a $600,000 tax increase.
Sort of. That was not programmed in as an ongoing expense. So your 5-year plan, where we look at the long-term projections of the general fund, is not carrying that $500,000 every year. So the tax increase is intended to fund the ongoing expenses, not the one-time expenses. Does that make sense? So we're only looking at that lift once for $500,000, which would be bringing reserves
Part of this year's budget
down.
out of the $600,000 is,
It is, but it would be next year.
We have to
You
find
wouldn't
another
be able to,
500,000.
no, we,
exactly, on top of the inflationary factor for the next
we
year.
wouldn't have to find 500,000 next year because those computer costs are a one-time expense.
Right, but if you look at your 5-year plan and the amount of revenue needed, we're not needing as much this year as we would need next year because we've lifted a little bit more this year than we would need for
Okay, I
ongoing
don't understand where you're
expenses.
going. We'll have to talk about that offline.
Okay. All right, next slide for a minute. All right, these are, I hope these will go somewhat quickly. So,
Woo-hoo!
I know. All right, these are the things that you've brought out in our discussions that you want to talk about putting into your tentative budget. The meeting software, which is the PrimeGov software supporting the Council Office and Planning Commission. This is for transcription services only, post-production. It's $30,000 a year, almost ongoing, and $18,000 to implement. This would be implemented for both the council and the planning commission because you can't separate those. So we'll need yes, you need to include this, or no, you don't. And we would probably fund this out of the IT fund. Turnout gear, we would need at least $20,000 of ongoing expense, but it would end up being $50,000 year over year after the fact. And then one-time costs of $290,000. Or take out the 291 time, and Chief Maxfield could implement this over the next 4 or 5 years based on tenure and time in the department. So he would do double turnout gears for those whose turnout gears have been used more or are more are longer term. Or you can fund them all as double turnout gears at once, but then we would have to figure out how to fund that every 10 years or 5 years, whatever that lifespan is.
Not to question the chief's wisdom, because I'm sure he could figure this out, but you wouldn't necessarily want to give it to the most senior guys that are going to retire the soonest, right? And be right? You know what I'm saying?
I know, I see what you're
mean,
saying. Yeah.
brand new turnout gear to a guy that's on his way out the door at 6.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
I'm
So-
sure the chief has thought through all of that.
I'm sure he has. It's just
Yeah.
when you said based on tenure, I'm
He
like,
was talking about the
well, to a
ones that
point.
had the most use or already seen a fire.
Right.
And also he was talking about the ones that are most tenured, but I'm sure he would take into account whether they're gonna
Right.
retire or not. He typically cycles them into management and administration once they're ready or
Right. They
close.
stop wearing turnouts quite so often.
Yeah.
On the turnout gear, I would be strongly in favor and would like to encourage my fellow council members to jump on board with me. We need to phase this over a period of years and not do it all at once. It's,
Do you have a number that you'd like to shoot for this year, like a dollar amount
I
maybe?
just take that 290 and divide it by 5. Let's do it over a period of 5 years. That's going to be easier to absorb, and it's going to be easier for the fire department to figure out where to even put them. Right? So
I don't think locker storage is a concern. But I think you're right as far as like we talked about the allocation, who gets what when.
and we can let Chief Maxfield figure out that minutia.
Right.
Right? But
Right. Oh yeah, I don't want to figure that out at all. But I don't think there's a cost with storage. So.
Well, thanks for that.
I don't want to get into this in a public
where that
meeting,
came
but I know that the fire department would be fine with a 5-year rollout instead of an all-at-once rollout. I don't think that we're going to lose firefighters.
Oh, I'm sure.
And we are already paying our firefighters more than any other department in this entire valley. And now we're saying we need turnout gear for better recruitment. We already have the pay for recruitment. We're already recruiting with the best pay in the valley. So I'm not against our firefighters. I'm just against this ridiculous $290,000 for turnout gear that all in 1 year. Yeah.
I'd be in favor of dividing it into 3. I think doing $100,000 a year, for 3 years. Just because the longer you drag it out, the more it's gonna cost each time. So you divide it by 5, in the 5th year, it's actually gonna cost, 25% of what it would be, what 1/5 of it would be now, just because you waited, yeah. Time value of money and all that.
I'm listening.
So I'd be in favor of doing it, of dividing it into 3, but that could also be let me rephrase that. I'm in favor of doing 100,000 this year. I'm also in favor of doing the 290, don't get me wrong. But I could come down to 100,000 this year and having that be, whether that's a third, whether that's a fourth plus, going into the fund for the turnover in the future, whether some of that's, part of the ongoing versus the one time. Let the chief decide how to split that up. But I'd be in favor of coming down to 100,000 from the 290.
As
makes
one-time
sense.
money or as ongoing expense?
Well, part of it would be one time, part of it would be ongoing, but I'd let the number crunchers figure out what's the
See.
best allocation for that.
If we're talking about going $60,000 ongoing, I won't vote for it. If it's, I'd rather do 290 one-time money. Brian won't like that because that means he's not gonna get $290,000 for a concrete. But, I could support 100, coming one-time monies over 3 years. So that we're using one-time funds for it, but to add, if you went over 5 years, that means you're adding $80 to $100,000 a year over the next, because you got the replacement cost plus the 60, so you're talking $80,000. That's a good
Councilman-
chunk of property tax increase that we'd have to deal with.
Councilmember Green, could I ask you a question about that? If if we really believe in this, really believe that these firefighters need these turnout gear, then why are we afraid to increase taxes in ongoing funds?
Because we can pay for them right now out of a one-time money
It's more
and not,
transparent.
and not increase taxes. That's why.
It's more transparent to increase taxes. If we really
I'm not-
believe in this, it's more transparent to increase taxes and give the money, the $290,000 to where it really needs to go, which is roads.
I would disagree. I would say it's easier to come up with something one time. And even if it's one time over 2 or 3 years, it's easier to come up with than to say, oh, I want to raise taxes for that. Because, yeah.
So
Well, that's my
just,
point, is that if we, it's easy,
I know where
it's
you're
easy to
going,
not
but-
raise taxes.
But what you're talking about is adding $80,000 this year to already a 3%, whatever we're talking about, property tax. So you have, and that's, $100,000 is 0.5% property tax increase.
I guess
So
my
that
point
means-
is the firefighters are already getting paid more than any other department in the whole valley.
I got it. I know.
This
For now.
$290,000, this 290 is an unnecessary expense, in my opinion.
It's unnecessary now. Then why do it as an ongoing expense?
But our road maintenance is a necessary expense, and that's where the money needs to go.
And that's where we get paid the big bucks to balance those priorities.
I think Councilmember Shelton's saying, we're gonna, raise our flag to say we didn't raise taxes, but then we're also gonna say we're gonna hide the fact that we didn't repair your roads. Because we didn't raise your taxes by that one-time fee, but we also weren't able to fix your roads. And, that's where the transparency comes in. That we're saying, we're trying to be heroes that we didn't do something, but then, the reason we didn't repair your bills is because we wanted to look like heroes on the other side. If I'm right, I think that's what
Yeah.
Councilmember Shelton is worried about that we're doing.
Okay, so Brian, how much of a road will I get to pave for $300,000?
There's a lot of variables in that.
Right, but it
At
really
base,
isn't
I
that
mean,
much.
there's so many variables. I don't have that.
Okay.
But if we keep
I want-
using that excuse all the time,
I
the
want
roads
him-
never get done.
I agree our roads are important. I'm not saying our roads aren't important. This came up because of concern over health, not to attract people to our city. Because you're right, they do get compensated fairly and currently well, but as Councilmember Bloom indicated, that's for now, and then they may be the low ones, because that's kind of how public safety
Everybody
seems
else
to
will
work.
catch up. Yep.
Yeah, that seems to be how it works. But it's just a matter of, we heard from the chief that sometimes those firefighters have to come in on their days off to get their turnouts out of the laundry. I kind of wonder about that because I think Joe would do it for Sam, but I could be wrong. And maybe I protect it really. Yeah, I mean, that's to protect my life, right? So maybe I'm very protective of who takes care of my turnout. I don't know. I'm not a fireman, nor would I ever be one. Because I don't like fires. But exactly, hot glue guns, anything. I'll say I served time in the burn unit. I don't like fire. But my concern was just from a news story that I heard about San Francisco firefighters. Basically, what I wanted to ascertain is, are we buying the right turnouts? Because according to them, what the current turnouts are made out of are carcinogenic. But of course, most everything, the carpet in here, this table, most everything is carcinogenic. Well, I don't know, but it's labeled more so in California. So for me, it was just a health and safety issue for our firefighters. If I'm going to finance it, I do want to finance it with one-time money, because to me, I don't want to tell Sam that he gets one, but Joe, you're getting it in 3 years.
Well,
also
and I think
That's a
hard
good
for
story
me.
for tax people as well. If we increase your taxes, we can keep your firefighters safe with that story. That's a compelling story and I think could be useful.
Yeah, but I'd rather tell him that we need money for roads, because ultimately that's asphalt and concrete are really what we really need long-term.
So Councilmember Whitelock, just some quick math. It would buy about 3,000 tons of asphalt. It's about $97 a ton right now, I think, if I remember right. So, but that doesn't include labor or anything. That's just the material.
And how far does 97 tons of asphalt go?
Farther than zero.
3,000 tons. It depends on the size of the road and.
A few years ago, Brian took that $300,000, 78 south, 78 south.
Yeah.
Wow, so about a mile.
Which means that now he would be able to go from 70th to 72.
Yeah, exactly.
Can
Yeah.
I just say one thing? There's been some debate about ongoing money for this item versus one-time money. I just want to be clear. A second set of turnouts, however you fund it initially, it raises the service level that we're
Ongoing.
funding for firefighters. And so it creates an ongoing obligation to maintain 2 sets of turnouts now as a city, not one. So no matter how you initially fund it, you're creating an ongoing expense in the future.
And I also have to chime in. I'm on the computer and I'm looking at some of these national health institutes with the firefighters, and all of them recommend, if a city can afford it, having 2 sets of turnouts dramatically reduces the exposure to the cancer-causing chemicals in their protective clothing. So if we can find a way to afford it, I'm 100% ready to do everything we can this first year. But if there is a compromise, up to 3 years is where I'm willing to go.
Ms. Steck, can we get you to bring back what it would cost? Just like we're saying with the computers, we need to put 75,000 each year away for that. Can you come back with the cost for each year, what we would need? Because to me, that's where the tax increase would be. Because we have the money to buy the initial sets, right? But ongoing, what would that cost be?
We don't need to come back ballpark, and this kind of grows a little bit, but roughly it would be about 50,000 a year, about 20,000 a year in turnover expense with second set of turnouts, and about 30,000 a year in ongoing replacement, $300,000 in turnouts that expire over 10 years time.
So if a
30,000
fireman
a
leaves
year
West
replacement.
Jordan, what do they do with his turnouts? Like
They're
burn
sized
garbage?
completely to the
Right.
person.
So basically, anytime someone leaves, they have
No,
to buy a
they,
whole new turnout.
not entirely, but $20,000 a year would be needed to get the different sizes. We try to, they manage that as best they can, but $20,000 a year would.
Right, so we're
help us
raising
with the
expenses by
turnover.
having 2 now, because now whenever someone leaves, you gotta buy 2 new ones.
Right. Councilmember
Yeah.
Whitelock did bring up a point with me, is when a firefighter leaves a city, there's a period of time where we're trying to replace that firefighter. And there's wages that we're not paying in that time. Maybe that period of time could, I don't know how that,
That's kind of what you're doing. When you say
I-
the one-time money, that 290, the turnover savings you're describing is what creates the one-time money of the next year. So
I don't want to try to plan on turnover savings.
right, because we might be increasing the number of firefighters, and that there's not going to be any turnover savings in that if we do. But if we're replacing a firefighter, then there could be.
Okay, so that will be up for your consideration. I would be happy, I would agree with Corbin. I think it'd be $50,000 of ongoing expense.
Thank you.
The next one was the entertainment stage. Now, this would not hit your budget this year. It would just be that the council has approval because it would be in your next year's budget, because it would be for Western Stampede, not this July, but the following July. It would be an events stage. What is it?
We still need it in the 2025 budget to get it for.
Even if you're contracted, I still, yeah, you haven't
So
received the
is the
service.
event stage to pay for the stage or is it to pay for
He's just-
people performing?
He just brought that up to me. He's like, Denise, it's like $45,000. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Is that a permanent stage or,
rental. It'd be to rent a stage every year. The 45 would cover AV cost and then cost of bands to have it programmed for 3 days.
How much would it cost to buy a stage that's on the back of an RV trailer, or not an RV, a semi trailer?
So our recommendation would be, from people we've talked to recently, would be to rent. South Jordan recently owned one. It flew off their trailer, blew over, broke. They're very high maintenance. So we'd prefer, I mean, if you want, if I was to go permanent, I would look at more of a concrete type amphitheater. Maybe not an amphitheater, just flat seating. You can do one of those for 200,000 to 300,000. But renting, yeah, was what we would recommend for an entertainment stage.
I don't need a stage.
Okay.
I have a piece of flat concrete.
Well, again, this
Call
is
it
for
pavilion at Veterans Park.
next year's.
Okay, so, that's up for consideration. What do I want to do with these? Do I want to do an up or down or? I need to know so we can prep the
Sorry.
tentative budget for you.
It would be very helpful, right, if tonight we can get a thumbs up, thumbs down, so we know where on these different items on the list, where the majority of the council wants to roll it into the budget or doesn't want to roll it in, because preparing your tentative budget for the 26th, we need to know to include these or not include these. So we can keep reviewing them, but before the end of the night, if we can take an informal vote on each one, that will help very much.
Who on the council is in favor of the entertainment stage? I'd like to hear arguments in favor of it.
Now, this
I'm in
is-
favor of it because I think it's needed
Is this just for the rodeo for?
for the
3 nights?
carnival, basically.
Yeah, the carnival, it was building before COVID hit, and then when COVID hit, the entertainment stage just went away. I'm in favor of it, so I'm a thumbs up on all 4 agenda items.
I don't want to spend that yearly. I'd rather put the money into an amphitheater in the park and have something, because every year I'm going to spend 20 to 30 next year and then 30 to 40 and then.
Well, you're
Can we
actually
make
going to spend
that,
45.
can we make that $12 million bond,
Well,
a $13 million bond and build a
If you
stage?
build a amphitheater, that can be used more than 3 days a year.
Remember, there is a small amphitheater at the Viridian Center. That's not really that's not really the location where we're talking about putting this entertainment stage, right? It's just want to remind you, if you're
Yeah.
talking about building one, you
I
have
think-
one
I think
kind
it's a
of in the
patio.
vicinity.
Well, and you know, Viridian's useful, but it's in the wrong spot if you want to have everything over in the middle of the park.
It's also not ours.
So
I mean,
But
that's the biggest thing. It's not ours.
I'm
We can't
more with Councilmember Whitelock. If we're gonna spend $20,000-$30,000 a year, I'd rather just build one and
There's one in Daybreak that an architect showed me as an example. It's just in a park, flat grass, but it's got a concrete stage with a little roof
Yeah.
over it, power, and they built it for around 200,000.
something like what
That's
Midvale's,
pretty nice
Yep,
too. I
like
it.
Midvale's got too, right?
Build that, do that. I'll spend one-time money on that.
I
All
like
bond.
that idea.
I just had a
Okay,
cufflink
so
fall out of my shirt.
Are you wanting to add a CIP project?
Who's in favor of a CIP project stage at Veterans Memorial Park as opposed to this ongoing temporary?
we're gonna take 300,000 more out of CIP?
Yeah,
This, well, out of reserves, yeah.
on a park project.
Out of that 27 million in reserves, yeah, I'll take 300,000.
18 million in reserve, but
18 million. Well, it's because we spent 9. I don't know, I just make numbers up. I'm in favor of that.
Okay,
I'm
I've
in
got
favor.
3.
Yeah, no, and I know that I don't want to take anything out of CIP, but I would rather do that than.
I wouldn't take it
30,000
out of
every year,
CIP, I'd take it out of
45,000 every year.
reserves.
Okay,
Out
so
of
I need to,
reserves.
Yeah. but I'm-
Becky, I need to add
Oh,
the
it's not out of
CIP
CIP?
project.
Okay.
Okay,
But
so
yeah,
we'll
I'd
add
rather
a
do that
CIP
than
project and
45,000
take out
every
the
year.
entertainment stage. And the turnout gear, are we doing $50,000 a year? Or are we doing one full expense? So I need a thumbs up for one full expense. I know Councilmember Bloom, turnout gear, I need a yes or no on, I have a 1.
I don't know where you're going. If it's
Yeah.
a one-time expense, okay.
One-time expense.
With, well, it's
One-time
gonna,
expense.
it's gonna cause the ongoing expense that Corbin talked about.
It will cause an
of
ongoing
roughly
expense, but I'm gonna
$50,000
have
a
to
year.
buy the first ones with 290,000.
Time to get it
Am I
started.
getting all firefighters second sets of turnout gear at one time? Or am I rolling this out over a 3-year period?
My-
That's the
My only
thumbs
thing with
up.
that is I don't know how that rollout looks. I don't know how it looks like, well, every third fireman gets, and you gotta go,
Let-
well, I
let-
guess I'll
well,
wait
let's
till.
re-
That's not our problem. That's the
Let-
chief's
let's-
problem.
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like. I can't vote.
To be,
Yeah, I'm with that too.
Well,
Done the
when
same
this
thing
was
with
first,
cancer screenings.
I'm 100% in
when this
your-
was first mentioned a
in
few
your
weeks
camp. I
ago,
always do
he was
apologize.
like, I don't think I can get it all done in 1 year.
Well, that's fine. You carry it over to the next year's budget, but it's gotta start somewhere.
Yeah,
So.
that's the hard thing. We can say it's the chief's problem, but like you said, Councilman White,
Either-
I don't know if that's something I want to give him.
Either way, we give the chief a problem. We either give him a problem how to do it in 1 year, or when to do it, or how to roll it out, how to make it fair, how to do it over a long period
It's less of
time.
a problem if we give him all the money and say
That's-
no.
I-
if
I
you,
agree.
Really not our discussion to
if,
have.
if
Right.
you,
But it's something I've got to look at. I can't just,
Right, so the question that our discussion to have is, do we want to budget $300,000 this year plus a $50,000 ongoing budget, starting right now? Or do we want some other number this year? That's our discussion to have. Do we want $100,000 this year? Do we want $300,000 this year? That's, all that goes along with that goes along with that, but that's our.
right.
Okay, so thumbs up or down. If you want to purchase, or if you want to give the chief the money to replace all firefighters' turnout gear in 1 year.
And I
3.
can't be in the middle, but, we know,
Okay.
we're
Thumbs
Pamela.
up. There's
Okay,
3
so I
plus
have a
Pamela.
majority with the
But
turnout
I-
gear at one
It's
time,
only
and
just
then
because I can't see what the yearly thing would even. look like.
programming ongoing expense starting next year. I will not program ongoing expense this year.
Yep.
All right, and then the meeting software, can please thumbs up or thumbs down?
Nobody's voting for you, Alan, sorry.
Okay. And then the code enforcement officer, we haven't had a discussion on yet. This was brought up by Councilmember Shelton.
This was my request.
So a thumbs up to add another full-time code enforcement officer. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Have we heard, what was Brock's thought on that? Can we just recap that really quick? Do you remember? What-
Everybody said they were gonna check with Brock.
Paul? Or
he
Corbin?
nodded.
or
I
someone?
know that Brock would like to have another
Uh,
full-time person.
Mayor
so-
Burton wasn't even willing to commit to hiring a code enforcement officer, even if we fund it. And I've not had a follow-up conversation with him about that.
I've had a follow-up conversation about that. We love this idea of needing another way to improve the aesthetics of our community. A little bit the challenge with code enforcement is there's a pendulum on code, right? We start enforcing code a little too much. And every elected official gets calls like complaining, I'm getting code on me about my 4-inch weeds being 4.5 inches. We enforce it too little and it is the other end of the spectrum, right? My 20-inch weeds at my neighbor's house aren't being enforced. What I suggested to the mayor is if the council funded this, we'd like to figure out a way to make it a positive interaction. accomplish the same goals, but make it a positive interaction. For example, we have some of our CIP money we want to use for positive aesthetic improvements in areas that have very a lot of public exposure. And we don't know exactly what this looks like, but let me give you some hypotheticals. A lot of the most egregious aesthetic problems in our city aren't on city property, but they look like they're on city property. I'm talking about broken walls along Redwood Road or along 6200 South, where they're actually on private property, but the homeowner and everybody else looks at it and think, oh, the city's not fixing this broken wall. But we don't fix the broken wall because it doesn't belong to us. What I would propose is we take this position, or we take a little bit of our road CIP money or something else and say, hey, homeowner, right? Everyone's stealing Brian's money. I want in on it. Hey, homeowner, did you know this broken wall is actually your responsibility? As a city, because it's in the public sphere, what if we give you a micro grant? We'll match up to half the cost of replacing it, or something to that effect. Because we got a ton of those. We got broken walls. We got end caps missing. We have damages from
Pink walls.
accidents. We have unlandscaped corners where it was put in by a subdivision developer, but there was never an HOA to maintain those public sphere areas, and they're no man's land, and they're an aesthetic problem. And so I guess this is a little rambling way of saying, if this is funded, we will use it to try to figure out how to improve the aesthetics in our community, but it might not be the traditional approach to code enforcement.
You're saying it might not be an officer? It might not be a head count?
Well, you're funding a position. It would be a head count.
Okay.
Yeah, but we just don't know, right? If we do another officer, maybe that is the best way of doing it, but you run the risk of swinging that code enforcement pendulum too much to the side of too much enforcement. They are very, very busy, no doubt. Our 3 officers now are the best we've ever had, and they are clearing more cases per year than we've ever had. But it's reactive. It's reactive. It's not proactive at all, and it's reactive and slow. So yes,
Okay.
right? They're not as responsive as they could be with a 4th officer and being quick on the reaction, and certainly not at a point where it's proactive.
I appreciate that explanation. So that being said, I'm in favor. I'm in favor of funding this.
I'm out.
I'm in.
Yes, so I can barely hear you, but yes, I
The
said
mic's not
my
on.
thumbs up.
My apologies, my mic was off. So you're in favor of adding an additional code enforcement officer, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, next slide. I'm sorry, I'm trying to move as quickly as I can through these. The next one is,
Was that, can I,
Yes, that
for
was
the
four in
minutes,
favor.
was that a majority?
that was a
said-
majority, yes, that was a majority. Great. So this is an item that came up after the mayor's budget was proposed. And I think the mayor emailed you about this. He would like to remove the Healthy City Committee title for that $5,000 earmark and instead add Title II committees and make it $10,000. It would be funds available to all the committees that are under the mayor's what's the right word? Title II.
I can speak to this. There was discussion a couple of weeks ago about removing $5,000 from the Healthy West Jordan Committee. The mayor and I both feel like there's lots of committees: Diversity Committee, Sustainability Committee, Healthy West Jordan Committee, Airport Committee. What am I forgetting? Oh, Western Stampede Committee. We would rather see a little bit of a bump in this line item, but open it up for all of the committees to access. Because like the Sustainability Committee, that's the one I work with, and they are approaching me often about, we want to do air quality monitoring, we want to do a community garden, we want to propose this project or this event, but they're a committee without any funding at all. And so diversity committee likewise, sometimes their wishes are put on hold because there's no funding dedicated for those committees.
There are only two committees that have actually done anything in the last 2 years. Western Stampede and the sustainability. I know the airport committees met, but they haven't done any, as far as I can tell, I don't know what they meet on. My personal opinion is I don't want to give them any money until we see something established that actually doing something.
Yeah, that's the chicken and the egg dilemma, a little
Yeah.
bit. At least with the sustainability committee, I
Well,
would
w-
speak to.
we
That's the one I know
changed-
the most.
We changed Title II. I'm going to be blunt here. We changed Title II. Has there been anything to establish charters, nominate people, get people? The Sister City Committee went away and all of these committees I haven't seen anything where anything got restarted under the new Title II, which means the mayor has to do the charter and appoint them and do anything. We haven't seen any of that. So how are they operating in? Yeah. So I'm a no there.
What if this year we just put it into Title IIs, but leave it at the 5,000 that they have? Then we'll see what they do with it.
I'd be in favor of that.
Yeah,
Right,
they could
that's-
come with a budget
That's what I was
amendment.
gonna say
That
is,
works for
is
me.
if we put it in at 5,000 and 6 months into the year, you say, hey, we spent that and we got ideas to spend 5,000 more, come and ask for it.
It's already in the budget as Healthy West Jordan. You're saying we just changed the title on
Change the
that
name.
line item?
Yep.
Is that a
Easy
majority?
enough.
I think that's a majority.
Councilmember Bloom?
That's thumbs.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Already in use.
Okay. The second item, oh,
Oh,
sorry.
we got 6.
About 300,000.
That seems to be the going rate for
Okay,
everything right
it's-
now.
All right, second discussion item for the mayor's request is and I don't know, did this come from the Community Arts? Okay, so the Community Arts Council has requested their funding be increased to 75,000 from 60,000 a year.
Did they say
Um,
why?
Yeah, let me speak to this one. I need to start with an apology to them and an apology to the mayor.
Because originally was
The-
that, right?
It was not in the mayor's budget. That's the apology and the oversight. As you'll recall, they presented to the council in January, as part of their grant program, March. In their presentation to the council, they did say at that time, we would like to ask that our annual grant appropriation be increased from 60,000 to 75,000. The mayor was supportive of that, is supportive of that, and would have put it in his proposed budget. However, I and the budget committee, it didn't come through our normal budget request process, and frankly, I just forgot all about it. It did not make it into the mayor's proposed budget. It is something the mayor would propose and support if the council would support it. Let me explain what they want to do with that $15,000. Why they want $15,000 more.
Right?
They did, yep,
Refresh me.
So I'm gonna just run into.
that's fine.
But you also have the date on.
Kayleen, can you put your mic on?
Sorry, Pamela, yeah. I just said I'm gonna go get a bottle of water. And then
Sorry.
I wanted to find out if Corbin would, you see the financials or something, right? You get a report from them?
That's the report you
you-
got back in March,
Did
yeah. I can
you
pull that
see
up,
how
but I'm not
much
looking at it
they-
right now.
How much they raised on their own?
No, but I have a note from them today as to what their efforts are and what their efforts look like. I can speak to that a little bit because
Thank you.
I anticipated that question from you, but I don't have the dollar amounts. They're asking for $15,000 in addition to the $60,000 they receive now. Here's how they would spend that $15,000. 8,000 of the 15 would go to pay for the rental fees and utilities at their rehearsal space. They call it the corner, yeah, the Cultural Arts Society of West Jordan Corner. This is where they do all their rehearsals. It's a dedicated rehearsal space. We have noticed in City Hall that they have not been asking to request this space for rehearsals as much as they used to because they have that space.
Well, they
I
would
think
have to
they've made
pay.
very good use of it.
I just interject, they'd have to pay for it or they'd have to come for a fee waiver. And they haven't done that in the past, so we would have to make sure that it's done right if they come in here to use it. Because that's not part of the contract, is to use it, space in the city hall. And
Okay.
so they'd have to either pay the room rentals like they're doing there, or they would have to ask for a fee waiver.
So they have a need there for rehearsal space, whether it's at the corner or it would be here and requesting a fee waiver or requesting additional funds to then pay the city because their fees weren't waived. But they're making use of the corner. They're making very good use of the corner. 8,000 of the 15,000 would go to their rental of the corner. 2,000 would be for visual arts community classes program. This is a program they'd started offering and they'd like to continue offering. It's a free visual art classes to the community to engage more residents in visual art activities. It's for all ages. The $2,000 funding covers supplies, marketing, and promotion. Likewise, $2,000 of the 15 would go toward literary arts program. This is to organize public readings and workshops and promote the literary arts. And then $3,000 is just general inflation and increased costs. The inflation's increased, impacted them dramatically as well as all of us. Their royalties, their licensing fees are going up. Their administrative costs are going up. Their public relations and marketing costs are going up and on and on. So that's the 15,000. They have been at 60,000 as long as I've been here. I don't know what they were prior to that. Well, prior to that, they were a part of the city. Yeah, yeah. So we have not increased it during my tenure here. Let me switch gears a little bit and talk about the fundraising. You asked about the dollar amounts. I don't have information about the dollar amounts. I do have information about their efforts, their programs, and their efforts on fundraising.
The reason I ask is I didn't see that on their financials. I didn't see a line for that. How much have they raised? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either, but I can try to find that.
Because that was part of the deal when we.
Your mic's still.
Sorry, Pamela. That was part of the deal when we did the 60,000 and then when Janessa got hired, that we wanted to see their efforts coming through their fundraising. And that's what we talked to them about.
Yeah.
And I just haven't seen the like the one year they did a big gala fundraiser. But I didn't see that this past year. I didn't see what they did for their fundraiser. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know what they were doing for their fundraiser.
And do we get what they make in ticket sales and stuff?
They keep that.
But I mean, do we get the number?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it was in their financials. It
exactly.
had
I'm trying to remember.
it had their earned revenue. It
Okay.
had their grant revenue. Here's their efforts. They've started a new Cultural Arts Society insider programs and insider elite programs. This is the program to offer exclusive benefits. It's like buying VIP access, get early tickets, all those kinds of things. Yep. They have increased their grant writing initiatives. They have been applying for 3 to 5 government grants each month. They've diversified their grant targets. They've done outreach to local businesses. They're consistently reaching out to 600 local businesses seeking sponsorship, partnerships, and in-kind donations. I'm reading this from Janessa. Customized sponsorship programs. They're offering tailored sponsorship packages that provide businesses with visibility and promotional opportunities at their events. They have raised their ticket prices to further support their financial stability. They've increased their ticket prices for all their events. The adjustment reflects the rising costs of production. They remain committed to making the events accessible. The modest increase in ticket prices covers royalty fees, venue rentals, which have gone up, and improving the production quality. And then they've done some other fundraising campaigns, and a crowdfunding campaign.
Does anybody have, does anybody have questions, whether you're gonna support this or not? You need more information, or can we?
I have a question though about the, and I mean, my wife's still heavily into it. I can probably find out more, but the corner, so $8,000, that's additional to what, or is that what they pay a year, or is that they need
I don't know.
$8,000 more?
I don't know.
Apparently they need $8,000 more.
Yeah, cause it just, and I know that
I
there's a
had that
lot.
same question.
lot that goes on in
$8,000
that.
for a lease and utility sounds extremely, that can't possibly be
Yeah,
the
but I'd like
total
to know what the
amount.
whole thing
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
I wonder if that's like, if their rent went up this year and they need
Yeah,
that
cause
much more. to
and
cover it.
that's exactly what I'm wondering. And,
Yeah,
and if this is something we want to support, is basically paying their rent on something, I'm wondering if do we have some place somewhere that we could, we don't know.
No.
Well, I'm getting a yes and a no, so.
well,
I mean, it depends on what, I don't know what this facility is.
Yeah, I need to get in there.
Like, I don't know what that looks like, but.
It's a facility that they don't have to ask us permission for.
Our community room is not a dedicated space where, and I think,
storage of stuff and all that other.
yeah.
Yeah,
stuff that goes
that's what
into
I
that.
need, and it sounds bad. I need to get in there. It's been a long time since I've been a part of their, their board and stuff like that. Man, it just seems like that's
We-
a huge expense for,
Do we have a seat on their board? I was wondering if
and I
that
think
doesn't
we
make
should. I know,
sense.
like,
If-
I know at Midvale, we've got two people represented from Midvale, from the city and the council who sit on the arts board.
Right, and I think, I mean, we pay half this much to Chamber West, and we have multiple seats on different things, so.
That's a good point. We should,
I-
if we're
I would
funding this, we
imagine they
should be
would
on the
welcome
board.
that.
I 100% agree with that, because that way,
Now, that's when we discuss their contract and we want to amend that coming up, but I'm just thinking, if they want $75,000, I think we might want to have a
just like
voice.
you wanted more than 20% on the water board.
Yeah, well, I think we're paying, I mean, that's 50% of their budget or a little better maybe,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
um,
no, we should have someone on the board, and obviously it seems like that would be someone like myself, but I would definitely
I
say
would-
someone
I would
else.
happily nominate you if and when we get to that point,
But I want to be very clear that I'm a huge supporter of the arts, but I'm a bigger supporter of the arts done right.
You like the arts.
I do like the
Amen.
arts. But it needs to be done right. And I know that some people on this council have not liked the way it's been done. And that's because I don't know if there's been the full transparency.
That's been a big.
And that's
big
why I
sticking
think
point is
there
the
needs to be someone
transparency,
from
so-
this council on their board.
And then we don't have to wait for a report, right?
Yeah, we don't have
Because
to,
we
I can
got-
go, hey,
yeah.
I just heard them say that they're spending this much money. Like I heard, so here's one thing I heard recently, my wife brought up, and I brought up a question to the mayor. They apparently only got like half of their 60,000 or something. And because of that, they can't fully go after rights that they would like to, because they don't have the money now to pay for the rights. They're waiting for the other part of the money, and by the time that comes through, they don't get the shows that they would like to get. And so that's, like I said, that's just something that my wife brought up to me, and I brought it up to the mayor, and I haven't gotten a response from them. Okay, so I don't know if that's even true, but if we were on their boards, we would know that then.
Right.
So I think it'd almost be something that says, if you want your 15,000, it comes with one,
It's,
You want your 15K, amend the contract
and one of us is on your board.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think if they really want the money,
So with that said, I'm okay putting it in the budget. We don't have to let them spend the money, or the mayor doesn't have to write the check
right,
unless he did, but I'm okay putting it in the budget with that in
that,
mind.
and that would be the amendment I would say, because I think that's, and then that way the other members of the council can go, you were there, what do you know? And what have you seen? And it's not we're waiting for a 1 yearly report every once in a while.
Do you want just one or do you want two seats on their board?
I don't know if we've got
How
two
many
people
seats,
that
how
want
many
to sit
people are on their board?
Okay.
It's a
I'd say one,
It's
one and an
pretty-
alternate.
It's
would be-
fairly good size. It's a healthy board. Yeah, it's not a
Yeah, but
struggling board.
It's
Well,
not,
I
it's
will
not
say,
our,
and-
it's not our board, so we can't just say, hey,
Yeah.
let's put two people on.
One,
Well,
one
we
thing I will
can if
say
we're
though,
giving-
just so
if
you
we're
know,
funding it.
I think my
Always
wife is
done
about
one
to be put
distribution,
on the board, so
except
that
for
might make me a
2021
conflict of
when
interest.
they didn't
Okay.
get
As,
their
as much as I think I could help, but anyway, just let you know.
But also it should be on the board with voice and vote.
100%. I agree completely.
On
A
the
voting
board
board.
with
Oh, yeah,
voice and vote.
I mean, I love the arts, but like I said, when it's done wrong, that's where I get bummed.
Yeah.
And I
So-
look at this money. I owned a theater where I ran a theater for an entire year and had shows going every single week. My budget was less than 60,000 for a theater I owned. But they're also doing bands and this and this and this, so that's why I need to. Yeah, they got the youth theater and they got, so that's what I'm saying is, I just want to see what it is they're doing and make sure, and my theater was a for-profit theater. anyways.
That's really all we've been asking for
Yeah.
all along is, it's like, we just want to ensure that what we're giving it for is going for that.
And that's
And-
where I think we can help if we're there and can
Yeah.
see.
I'd love to
what's
see
coming.
them come properly.
Okay, so,
Yeah,
Can
that
I
would be-
ask,
That would be my goal.
it sounds like there's a majority that are in favor of this
This,
with
if
strings
this.
attached.
yeah,
Am I
Yep.
understanding that majority?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
it's 11 o'clock. We have just a few more things we need to update you on. They are less discussion items.
So one more hour?
If you
It's either
stop
this or
me-
another meeting. We think,
well,
these are,
we did set some time aside for June 12th for that meeting if we need it. We do have other things on that agenda, but if we have half an hour, 45 minutes of budget, that wouldn't break.
I do have a thing that I want to bring up about rental property business licensing at some point before the budget's done on the fee schedule plus lot line changes.
Okay, where are we on the fee schedule? That's for the 12th, right?
Andy, you
Is
tell
it-
us what's
Is
next.
it in here?
I
I
think we
just
need
wrote
more
a
time for the
slide
fee schedule.
That just said
I
fee
would agree.
schedule.
Yeah. Okay, you guys tell me what you want to do. I mean, we can move to adjourn, but.
Do you
we're
have
not-
some quick slides?
I am not the one
Cindy.
holding this up.
I think she's thought that a lot of them. were
Denise,
quick-
you
quick
talk way
slides.
too much.
I can flip through them. Let's flip through them
Cindy
and then
has
if
some
they
quick
become
slides.
discussion items, then we can
Okay,
just move
How
past
about
it and you
this?
can
How
discuss
about-
them on the
How about
12th.
this? Let's give it 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Let's
Okay,
give it 10 minutes. And if
Next.
we're still
okay.
debating this slide, we're done.
On the left-hand side is the revenue I'm going to identify to offset the expense. And I hate that, I don't know where the council, somehow in the transition, this messes up like everything, like my spacing and stuff. I don't know why it's doing that. So what we would like is in the general fund, there were several things that were not included. And we talked to you about court interpreters. They did not anticipate the use or the price of interpreters. They need $5,000 extra. I messed up and I missed a couple of our capital leases for equipment. They're obligations we have that I can't get out of. They're like 10-year leases and we're on like year 6. So, this is for fire trucks, engine trucks, and an ambulance, and a 10-wheeler for the streets department. So I need to make those payments, and I apologize, I did not get those out. The next item is in the Road Capital Projects Fund. UDOT has come back with our requirement for that widening, and it has increased our obligation by $758,000. We don't have a choice. Okay. The Capital Projects Fund, this is the grant we talked about. I have grant revenue identified and then increasing the Sycamore Park budget. Next. The sewer fund, this is another capital lease. This is for the Vector truck that we need to take out of the sewer fund. Again, use of reserves for these things. The solid waste fund with my new, the new information, oh man, that didn't get changed. It's $125,000,
I
not.
was gonna
I was,
say.
that was.
No, it was 725 when we were using April numbers, and Brian and I are like, we just think that's way off. Something's wrong. So
Okay.
we believe 125 will do the job. The streetlight fund, we received a grant, a federal grant for the lights at the rodeo grounds. So we got $140,000, I'm assuming, I hope.
That's what it says.
Okay, 151,000, and we're gonna budget lights at the rodeo grounds for that same amount. And then the 90th South Betterment, which has been in your budget over and over and over. But this time I guess it will get done.
Yeah, the betterment before was to pay UDOT for all the electrical work to get the lines installed to get a base, and this is money now we're obligated to install 29 lights. And I guess we chose, before I was here, the double acorn headlights. So that's the cost to purchase all 29 lights for 90th South.
All right.
Okay,
Okay.
so this will be not a UDOT Betterment then. This
No,
is
will be
us.
Yeah, our
Okay, then
street
I need
lights
to-
installing the lights.
Sorry.
On a
Yep.
Sorry,
UDOT
Becky.
road.
Yep,
So we'll just leave.
that
it
was the
label.
agreement, yep.
Okay, next slide. This is the fleet fund with those capital leases. So we're assessing them in the other funds. The fleet fund gets the money and then they pay the lease. And then the fleet fund has found that they have a safety issue with their vehicle lifts. They are past their date for replacement. They were not included and I forgot them in the budget. So that's $50,000. This is a large safety issue. So,
That's a one-time.
it's one time, yes. And then in the IT fund, we are finding that the maintenance for the City Works program that support community development is going to need ongoing maintenance on a regular basis, and that will be done through a contractor, and it will require $25,000 a year for that. And then 3 of the
So
employees,
that's not one time.
that is not, that is
But we're
ongoing.
using one time.
No, well, yeah, we are. Until I can get an allocation fix. Yeah, I'm gonna have to fix it next year. And then 3 computers for 3 of the additional employees, which would be the events assistant, the utility inspector, and the IT integrator.
Code enforcement guy need a computer.
And now the code enforcement officer. Thank you. Thank
mean-
you.
You mean we're
Thank
not?
you. I'll
we're-
need
you-
one more.
You mean we're not buying the little mini computers for $229 off of
Raspberry Pis?
Amazon?
Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
Can't you do it
So
all on your
yes,
phone?
thank you for that correction. I will need $10,000 of equipment
I
because
haven't
we
heard
have added the
Palm
code
Pilot.
enforcement officer. So, I think that's all for the ones that, these are things that I have found over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks that since the mayor's budget was proposed to you, that we were like, either we're missing from the budget or we've discovered as the budget has developed. So apologize for that.
On what we need to spend. I didn't see any savings.
Or revenues.
Look again.
Okay, I'll keep looking. Thank you. So we are going to prepare the tentative budget with the changes that you've put thumbs up for tonight. I don't know that you can tell me no on these requests, but I don't know what to do with that. So most of these are things that are absolutely necessary, or we've already made a commitment to. Capital lease particularly.
So
But the
what,
vehicle lift, you could say no, but I think that would be an OSHA issue.
what I would like to
probably.
see a slide on for maybe next time is don't put one-time funds on ongoing expenses
I know.
and tell me what the tax increase change has to be.
Well, and I can say I'm going to increase the IT allocation for these services because 25,000 is going to hit development services.
Right.
So I can do that, if you want me to.
I mean,
It
that's
will
a,
increase our
you know,
requirement
tenth
for
of
a
a
tax
percent or
increase.
less of a property tax increase to get that right instead of doing it wrong this year and fixing it next year. I'd almost rather just get.
I
it right.
appreciate that. No, I appreciate that. We will do that.
That's the only concern I have with all of this.
Great. I will do that. So we are going to be assembling the new tentative budget and we will send that out to you by PDF. It will include a list that will say, this is where the mayor's budget was, this is the change, and this is where it is now, so that you have a clear picture that is summarized versus like having to flip through every page and make sure that that's the change.
Say that, you say mayor's budget versus the new one.
Mhm.
I wanna know, cause the city council did that for all this stuff. So all the new stuff that you found.
Should
that
still
mayor
be
probably
part.
took at it, We wanna make sure that.
On a separate
that's not what
column.
the city
Uh,
council-
Chad, I can't hear what you're saying, Chad.
How's it going, Pamela?
He's asking me for a separate column, sort of, that identifies the things that
Whether it was
I
a city
omitted from
council
the
ad
mayor's
or a-
budget, and
yeah.
then, just another column, which I think is a great idea, of, things that the council has really intentionally added to the budget
Right,
through action.
right.
I think that's
Maybe
fair and reasonable.
Two charts.
Mayor, council, and the stuff that was missed.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, I
Should
can
be
do
part
that
of
for
the
sure.
Should be really part of the mayor's budget.
Well, right, but it just wasn't in the initial.
Oh, well,
the
yeah, what
initial
I wanted to
tentative
show us
that we
is there's
got.
the mayor that he already proposed, then there's our stuff that we proposed, and then there's the stuff
That
just
I
now that we missed.
proposed.
Yeah, this stuff we're just seeing now.
The stuff that
We
Denise
didn't ask for any
proposed.
of this.
Yeah. So it would look like the council had made a much bigger financial
Right.
move than they really had. I think that's fair and reasonable. I can do that.
Okay.
Okay, that's it. I did that in less than 10 minutes.
Wow, you did that.
Why didn't
in
you do the rest of it in 10
six.
minutes?
I tried.
We still have budget things
Yeah,
to
there's-
Well, we still have
discuss. So
the
we're
fee
gonna,
schedule.
You
we
still
gotta
have
talk-
a couple things. Go to the next slide if you wouldn't mind, Warren.
we got fee schedule.
This is just notes. You've asked us to adjust the fee schedule with the one fee that we had totally wrong. You've asked us to bring a work session to you in late fall and early winter to discuss the Western Stampede, which one of the items we discussed this evening. And then UDOT has told us that we will need another $250,000 to complete the 70th South Bridge project, but it would not happen until 2026. So I will have it added to the 5-year plan in the road CIP. Those are my other notes.
That's a
Yes, it's
Heartland?
the Heartland Bridge. Mhm.
That's becoming a little pricey.
They're pricey. Yeah.
Seriously. We need
And
to get our
next slide,
lobbyists on getting money back from them instead of.
this will be your discussion item for the 12th.
Okay.
So let's concentrate on the consolidated fee schedule and any of your questions or requests for studies or whatever it is you want to discuss. And Becky will be here and she will lead that discussion. I will be in the air.
I have a quick
Flying.
request from council members. Just because Kayleen brought this up, but I have an item that I want to bring up too. If you have an item that you want to discuss before, send out an email with a primer, just kind of, this is the framework of what I want to talk about and get your opinion on X, Y, or Z. Just so we're not coming at it blind, have to spend more time on something that could have been an email, right? So I'm gonna do that too. I have something that I want to bring up as well.
this?
A road,
Oh, good.
yeah, a fee schedule,
Excellent.
a roads fee. Just because of what Brian said last time about $25 million kind of made my eyes get
No,
really big. So,
$75 million.
yeah,
Or 80.
so
Yeah, it was like 80
I
million.
started, yeah, he said some really big numbers with lots of zeros in them after commas. So I wanted to just bring up something to,
Council, may I ask one
Chris.
final question?
yes.
With this issue of a road maintenance project, would you request us to add additional funds in the road CIP for road maintenance to begin, for Brian to begin a project program?
I don't know. Would need more information about that. Yeah.
Would
Tell
you
me.
like me to add a project in road CIP for road maintenance in excess of our B and C road funds? Would you like me to add $1 million and say, Brian, start with this and then let's move this program forward? Or do you want to have
Well,
additional,
how would we fund it?
okay.
Right.
Out
yeah.
of, that would be out of CIP reserves. I know, he wanted some money, huh?
I gotta leave.
Yeah, I
There's no
stayed
money
here. Do I
left.
get $1 million?
You
I'll give
what?
him
I gotta
300,000.
leave. There's no money left.
Right?
I'm working with Corbin too and
On a
working on some different
program, okay.
options too.
Wait, if
So-
he gives you that, then are you gonna tell me you need more personnel?
Okay, so I didn't know this.
Not right now.
We're-
I mean, not,
So I
Like
could,
if you remember in the Class C
Down to
road
30
funds though,
seconds.
we're already spending down the reserves in that this
Ye-
year,
yeah.
this
Yeah.
current year.
yeah, yes, we
That
are.
doesn't
I mean,
mean- yeah.
certainly investing more in roads now is very, very helpful, but our road maintenance and funding of road maintenance is a long-term issue that's a major structural change that
Mhm.
needs to occur, not a
Yeah.
one-time.
No, and really the amount of money I'm talking about is spitting on a forest fire and I totally recognize that, but it's better than not spitting on a forest fire.
Well,
And-
and
a
you
lot of
realize too, Kate, Councilmember Whitelock, to your point, as you grow a program and if we're doing stuff internally and contracting stuff out, because we do all of our plan sets And if we're doing road work internally, we're doing the overlay work and everything. It will boil down to getting more staff. And
Yeah.
concrete, you guys know the story on the concrete issues we're facing. We're eventually gonna need another concrete crew to get this stuff ahead of some things. No, but I
Well,
can
I see
imagine.
most of the microphones have been turned off, and since we're not at the end of an agenda necessarily, would somebody like to make a motion?
Do we need to talk about, is the motion, are you talking about the $1 million?
No, I'm talking about a motion to go.
I'm going to move to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion. I'll second the motion. Just,
We're all too tired.
it's a non-debatable motion, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We'll see you on the 12th. Pick up where we left off. And we'll talk about something else too that I'm excited